OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, you're very welcome along. It is bang on 7:30. It's a Thursday morning. The weekend is nearly here. It means no Shane Hannon because he's off watching Man United 3, Barcelona 1 tonight in the second leg. And I think, is he also going to the Carabao Cup final? Or certainly there was some talk of him looking for tickets for that. So instead we've got Johnny. Johnny, good morning to you.
How are you, Ger? What's the crack?
I'm very well. How are you? And also Colin.
Johnny and Ger, good morning. I don't think Shane is going to go to the League Cup final, but I know he definitely wants to. And I presume if there's anybody out there with a spare ticket going by, you can get in touch with @Shane Hannon.
I've a lad who can get football tickets actually
For anything, anytime.
He's good, very good for football. Yeah, I don't know. Don't ask any questions, but yeah.
All right.
So yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
Well, I might talk to you about that after. I have a friend looking for tickets.
Well, remember you
too.
asked me of late, and I did actually sort you out. Wanted something in return, and
You wanted Ireland-England tickets. Just to put that on record. Ireland-England rugby tickets. On the day that Ireland are going for their first home Grand Slam / championship.
they weren't for me either. They were for
Assuming
someone
we'll
else.
beat. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be probably one of the toughest sporting events to get tickets for ever in Ireland, I would have thought.
The Ireland-England game.
Yeah. The France game looked completely impossible. We've obviously had the debate about the rugby tickets, but the Ireland-England game, yeah, if they beat Scotland.
Yeah, and Italy, of course. Have we any concerns about the Italian game? Cameron certainly did yesterday. There wasn't much coming through by way of comment on our YouTube channel or at Off the Ball AM.
No.
People are counting their chickens.
Interesting to see how Ross Byrne gets on if he starts. Very hard to see though the way Ireland are playing. I think it'll be reasonably competitive though.
Ross Byrne and Craig Casey are starting according to both of the all three of the Irish papers this morning have Ross Byrne at 10, Craig Casey at 9. We've got Ian Henderson at 4, and we've got Bundy back in the team at 12 for this game. So they're making changes, but not wholesale changes. Everybody else is as you would expect. Sorry, Ronan Kelleher starting at 2, and means Dan Sheehan is on the bench, which James Tracy predicted he's going to be in studio with us a little bit later on. So
it just adds a layer of interest in the game. See how Ross Byrne gets on starting at out half, and see if Sexton were injured indefinitely going forward, what sort of nick are Ireland in. And I thought Ross Byrne looked like when he was introduced against France, it looked like it was seamless to me. And I'm not obviously a rugby but I think it's going to make it really interesting. He's going to be the centrepiece of the game, I think.
I'm reliably informed Shane is going to watch the Manchester United women in the FA Cup on Sunday versus Durham. So
get tickets for that.
Speaking of counting chickens, it was 1-0 last night after about 68, 69 minutes in the game between Manchester City and Red Bull Leipzig in Germany in the round of last 16 in the Champions League. Were you, Johnny Ward, counting your chickens as a one-time, one-night only supporter of Manchester City?
I've had one decent bet this year really, and that was on the game last night. I backed Man City twice this season. The other time was at Anfield. Couldn't see them being beaten. Lost that game. Last night they were very good in the first half. I thought really good in the first half. But for me,
I'm not a very good gambler. I'm really not a very good gambler. But the one aphorism that I remember being taught very early on,
you're a good after timer judging on The Office this morning anyway,
was backing odds-on favourites away from home is the fastest way to the poorhouse.
One of the most stupid things I've ever heard. Honestly,
it is. I'm telling you, this was from a degenerate veteran punter who was like backing odds-on favourites
from
away
one
from
to the
home.
other. From one to the other. No, you could make the case that it was a dodgy game for Man City. I mean, if you see the back of the Irish Mail, agony for Pep as Haaland flops and City are held by Leipzig. I think that's a massive exaggeration. It's first of all, it's first world problem. It's not agony because the 1-1 draw in the first leg.
Well, it's the ghost of all those other games against slightly inferior opposition where they get in their own heads. They're supposed to win the game, and I'm telling you, I was like only half watching the game last night. I was like, this is not going to end well for them. There's just too many chances being missed.
That's why you come here for your incisive, top-class analysis. I was only half watching the game and I knew this would happen. The second half, sure, you could see the game was slipping away from them.
Yeah.
And he was placid on the sideline, Pep. I was saying to the lads on WhatsApp, was like, why is Pep not doing something here? The three at the back was really exposing them down the flanks. 2-on-1 for the corner that resulted in the equaliser. They'd lost their initiative after absolutely dominating the first half. And then when they did concede, they were again very good, but a couple of points. I'm not a bad loser in terms of like a losing bet. I can take a losing bet. God knows I've had enough of them. But seriously, what is the effing point of VAR if it's not a given a penalty at the end? He literally picks up the ball. He practically scoops the ball like he's picking up ice cream in the box, and it's the last, and they don't give a penalty. I'm like, what the actual? Have I actually just seen this? And secondly, Haaland was shite. Like, he was really, really poor. I'm looking at his stats here on what I presume is a reputable website, in his last, like, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games in which he's failed to score in 8 of them, and his figure for each game: 6.47, 6.2, 7.3, 7, 6.2, 9, 7, 6, 5.9. He was very poor last night, I have to say. If you'd never seen Haaland before, you're like, how did that lad, how is he not taken off? He had one good chance second half, dragged it wide. I'm not sure his confidence is that high at the moment. He didn't give me his body language wasn't great, and Manchester City couldn't find him. I think he touched the ball maybe twice in the first half, so he's gone through a little bit of a slow spell. But as a Manchester City, I think in terms of the title race now, I'm still fancying Arsenal. Manchester City had a great chance to seize the initiative. They couldn't beat Forest, and I wouldn't be banking on them beating Leipzig in the second leg on the basis of last night. They just look vulnerable.
Yeah.
And Pep came out on the pitch then and kind of given all this at the end.
That was a little bit Neil Warnock, wasn't it?
A bit weird.
Oh, sorry, not Neil Warnock.
Look at the body language of the players.
What's his name? At Hull.
Oh, that
was the end of him.
Man. They'd stayed up that time, hadn't they? Or had he come out at half time anyway? Hey, it was a bit strange. I was like, it's 1-1, okay, get over it. And it's partly your fault, because the game was completely slipping away from you in the second half, and you did nothing. Like, you did absolutely nothing, at least to my eye.
Listening to Johnny effing and jeffing first thing in the morning is one of the signs that spring is here, says Dara O'Toole. Yes, indeed it is, Dara.
Dara, it was one of these things. It was like, I can take a beating, and I was regretting the bet in the second half to an extent, but I was like, seriously, what is the point of VAR? And also, they gave 2 minutes of injury time. What was the point trialling like 12 minutes of injury time in the World Cup and then just getting rid of it? That was it. Let's trial something in the World Cup. And then you're like, well, there were about 6 substitutions in the second half with 2 minutes of injury time. Fair enough. Still enough time for a blatant penalty not to be given.
Let's fix something in the World Cup and then forget about the fact that we fixed it. I think is the way of portraying that, because it was the extra time in the World Cup was brilliant. It led to incredible drama. I wasn't a massive fan. I thought the games were a bit too long at like 100 minutes or whatever, but anyway, or 110 minutes at times. Yeah, not for you, the comeback from the Dutch and the ultimate penalties. No, you don't like that.
I have no bet in the game. But sorry, Colin, what is the point of VAR? And it was like the Liverpool-Brighton game. What is the point of VAR if Evan Ferguson is practically decapitated and you
not
don't
get
get
the right answer from me, but so
this is literally the most stonewall penalty ever. And it's like, sorry, what happened there? No explanation. Everyone's gone over to the referee. No idea. And then they just cut to the studio and blah 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 blah.
I think it was like 5 to 5 in the office on a Friday afternoon, and they kind of mentally had checked out, and they were like, "Oh, this three's going to come to nothing. It will just head to the keeper, and we're nearly done." And then the handball happened, and it was they're just appealing. They always appeal last minute for a penalty, and then we'll forget it. I'm telling you, they mentally definitely checked out of the game. That's the only explanation for what happened.
Not that it was only a Champions League last season. Whatever.
That's the only explanation.
Something like this, right? So the ball comes in. He kind of goes like this. No penalty. Right, like I don't know. I can take a beating, but sorry, like this was not a game in the Phoenix Park. Sorry to disparage Phoenix Park. Last season, the Champions League, and that's not a penalty with VAR. Okay, what's the point?
Maybe it's a conspiracy against Manchester City.
Which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, to be fair. I don't want them to do well at all, apart from if you have a bet in the game, which is fair enough. But there are a lot of worries there, Ger, I think. You know, they should be beaten. Leipzig are, 5th in the Bundesliga, albeit a tight Bundesliga this year. Not a bad side, but they should be.
They're not a bad side.
Why did Pep do nothing when the game was clearly slipping away from them in the second half? Like, the goal was not, like, undue at all, the equaliser.
They've kept just 4 clean sheets, and that's 15 games, Man City. you know,
Haaland is the interesting one, because Haaland is when he's not, and I made this point last night, when Haaland is not in the box, he's actually not that. He's an average enough player outside the box. He as long as he doesn't have space to run into, his touch is okay. He needs to be in the box and doing stuff inside the box. When he's not doing that, he gives the ball away a lot of the time. And City don't really look for him. They kind of like look elsewhere. They passed across. They go to Grealish, who was very good. They go to Mahrez, who played well. Scored, obviously.
Gundogan, when he was man of the match a couple of weeks ago, I remember he was handing over the man of the match, was talking about how Haaland had played better in that game. He'd made the runs that he was supposed to make. And there is just this sense that they haven't quite worked out exactly. But it's not untypical for anybody coming into Pep's team. It takes a long time for you to get in the team, to get his faith. Like, Sergio Aguero did not have the faith of Pep Guardiola.
Absolutely.
We're starting to see some signs of Grealish being excellent. It took a long time for anybody who's come in.
He's only 26 Premier League goals as well.
Well, that's the point,
not
right?
bad,
it's 32 overall, 26 in the Premier League. And speaking of Sergio Aguero, he's levelled Aguero's all-time Premier League for a season already. So if he's one goal shy of Man City's best ever Premier League season. So that's one side of what Haaland's impact has been so far. And then the other side is you have games like last night, which are becoming fairly frequent now, where he's completely isolated and basically a passenger. And at the same time, you're talking about the most lethal striker in world football. And it is a bit of a conundrum. The only comparison I can think of in modern football history was when Manchester United signed Ruud van Nistelrooy in 2001. And Van Nistelrooy was brilliant that season, but United as a team, they were worse. They diminished a little because it wasn't as free-flowing as it had been, because Van Nistelrooy didn't quite fit into the rhythm of everybody else, but he was their best player that season.
Yeah.
That's kind of what's happening with Haaland now. And Pep seems a bit exasperated.
If City played with a false 9 last night, they would have played better, I think. Now, it's a kind of a stupid point, because if you're playing against a team with Haaland in it, you can't play a high line, really, because he's just too quick. So Leipzig obviously did play sort of a conservative game, and they sat back. And I've sympathy for Haaland as well, because if Haaland isn't getting the ball in the box and he's making runs, but City aren't really finding him with passes, he himself, I think he could have frustrated Figure last night. He had a good chance in the second half, albeit on his right foot, and he shanked it. Like, it was a really poor finish, and his body language, as well as during the game at the end, I thought betrayed his kind of frustration. It's going to be very interesting going forward, because he's definitely frustrated at the moment, and he's not playing that well, what I've seen of him.
I counted 2 touches in the first 35 minutes, and it possibly was 3 by half time. I think it improved a little bit in the second half. But it's funny, because last season they were between Aguero and Haaland. They were a better team. But on paper they're far superior this season, and that must be a head scratcher for Pep. Definitely. The one that I would say is Jack Grealish is really coming along quite nicely. I thought was very impressive last night.
Also, he was fouled about 20 times, and I think he might give him 1 yellow card. But there's also this thing that's creeping into the game where just fouls are sort of, and I know you're laughing, Ger, but like, they're giving away, there's so many fouls now. It's creeping into the League of Ireland as well, I think.
I haven't seen you as passionate about anything in a long time.
I hate VAR, and I'm a fan of letting the game go, but there are a lot, like the Liverpool-Brighton game is a good example, where these ridiculous fouls aren't even bookings anymore.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like, where are we with the rules? Like,
well, we've definitely gone. There's been an overcorrection in favour of the brutalisation of the best players.
Yeah.
And you're kind of thinking, like, the game was excellent for a long period of time. The best football we've ever seen was when Messi was at his peak at Barcelona, and it was a foul to come through the back of somebody and try and break their ankle.
Yeah.
And that's why Messi and Ronaldo were able to play 80 games in a calendar year, and everybody's like, well, this is pretty good, isn't it? They're scoring record amounts of goals. No, too good, too much high quality stuff that we're seeing here. We need to allow the defenders. We need to even things up again.
Well, I like that too. Like, remember the Father Ted episode where they raffle the car, which involves obviously your man having 2,000 on the, and he actually, you know, he gambled a bit too much, your man, the Spin Master, whatever. Remember when Ted, like, he slightly dented the car and he goes, just fix that. VAR is a bit like that at the moment. It's like, let's tinker with it, and where are we if last night is normal? Like, what is the point of VAR if that's not a penalty? And is this human error? It's a complete systematic failure if that's not a penalty. That could actually rule Man City out of the Holy Grail to win the Champions League. They're not certain to win that second leg the way they're playing. Absolutely not.
I don't think they're certain at all to win the second leg, and I totally buy the point that this could be a massive moment, because if you're Leipzig in the dressing room afterwards, you're like, wow, we got away with one.
Absolutely, like it's 1-1. They'll definitely think they can score. Even Werner played quite well, and they're not bad. Leipzig, in fairness, they're not a bad side. And I don't know, that was insanely frustrating to watch for somebody who obviously lost money on the game. That's all. I have no more to say.
Grealish was fouled. Come on, the amount of diving in the game is getting out of hand. Call that out along with all the cynical fouling. But if
he wasn't diving, Grealish, he was constantly fouled. They knew he was turning inside in his right foot the whole time, and they kept fouling.
Mark Morgan has another modern example. There's Zlatan in Pep's own team in Barcelona, 2009-10. Player systems mismatch. I know that Messi and himself didn't get along at all, which probably definitely influenced Zlatan's brief tenure at Barcelona, but it has happened in the Pep system before.
I read the book, yeah, they didn't get on at all. But if you look at Pep last night, you're like, who is he aiming his vitriol here at? And it's worth looking back. I'm not saying it was necessarily Haaland, but Haaland was probably feeling, I've had a shit game here. Like, he had a 3 out of 10 game at best last night. And
who did you think he was aiming at? Because he was dragging over. He was himself and Silva had a good long conversation, and
Silva had a really good game.
Yeah. It looked like he's his like
go-to one. Yeah, he was absolutely excellent game.
A number one guy, which doesn't end well for you, really. Though the other thing is, in all this is, where's Cancelo? He's at Bayern. Like, I think it was a very important little Jenga piece there, and whatever flight of fancy / ego trip the manager went on and had a row with him. It's like, just put him in the team. You need him.
I thought Gundogan didn't have a great game, if that's worth anything, but. I'm glad Man City aren't absolutely dominant. I generally want them to win nothing, and the Haaland thing now, as ridiculous as it sounds, is a little bit of a conundrum for him, because when he's not inside the box, he does upset the system as far as I can see.
Yeah, you think they'd be able to work it out?
Yeah. It looked like they'd worked it out unbelievably well, but now it looks like teams are sort of working them out a little bit, because City haven't been great for the last couple of months.
And in fairness, you've got to give a lot of credit to the rest of football for catching up on this stuff as quickly as they're doing it. All right, here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Graham Hunter's going to join us at 8. We'll preview Barcelona Manchester United tonight. We'll also talk about Real Madrid and their greatness. James Tracy's going to join us to preview Ireland against Italy. Virtual Insanity with John Duggan at 8:40. Kathleen McNamee fresh from Marbella, where it wasn't a great game between Ireland and China, but the news broke afterwards. We're playing against the States twice in April for a very intense camp. And then Liam Hayes has been speaking with Joe. We'll bring you some of that around about 9:30 this morning. Ireland played China, 0-0 draw.
Yeah.
Multiple changes to the team, new caps.
Yeah, we watched it here in the office yesterday, 1 p.m. kickoff, so it was quite a community spirit actually in the office watching the game, but the game was fairly dire. Like, there was an absence of any atmosphere at all, but another positive for Ireland is another clean sheet. That's 6 in a row now under Vera Pauw. The last time Ireland conceded a goal was the 1-1 draw with Sweden last April. And as you were saying there, Ger, some debuts, Aoife Mannion being the most notable at centre-half alongside Louise Quinn, who was waxing lyrical about her performance afterwards, which was great. And Kathleen was chatting with Aoife in the build-up to the game. Kathleen herself was excited at the prospect of Mannion's inclusion, and that paid dividends yesterday. She was definitely stood out in what was, as I say, a pretty poor game. Vera
Pauw becoming sort of more Irish than the Irish themselves, like almost 7 clean sheets in a row. That's what we want. We want like a solid defensive base from which to work.
Well, defensively, there's been no question about Ireland recently, and even in the Scotland performance, that was a counter-attacking display, which was epitomised by the goal. But I suppose the one concerning trend was yesterday afterwards, Vera Pauw was, quite positive about the performance, talking with Kathleen. But she said in the 10-day training camp that preceded this game, the emphasis was on attacking build-up and play and possession. And that was the one thing that was really absent from Ireland's performance. Now, it's a work in progress, look, and it's good that they have gone out of their way to actually improve that element of their game. But the positive is that the default setting set in for the defence, and there was no goals conceded, or very few chances conceded for that matter. The problem is a week and a half working on attacking play, and it didn't really show. Like, the biggest threat was from Megan Campbell's throw-ins. Yeah, there wasn't really a pattern of build-up. It improved slightly in the second half. There, of course, was a very harshly disallowed goal in the hour mark, so Ireland could have easily won this game. I
couldn't see how that was disallowed.
Exactly. And you're talking China, the 14th best team in the world according to the FIFA rankings, and the Asian champions, so good opposition. So a really, really good structure with Ireland, like all really good Irish teams of the past. good structure, good core. What we're lacking is a bit of inspiration.
Is there a thing though, Ger, as well, if you play a game like that in an alien environment against a team, from miles away, it's kind of like it's hard to play your normal game. It's like almost like a behind closed doors game to an extent. Like
I think Dan was making that point as well, that there's no atmosphere here, and when the games actually matter, there will be an atmosphere, because there'll be 80,000 in the game against Australia. I kind of feel like these games are largely irrelevant in many ways. That the key relevance is you're getting new players into the squad who are improving the team. I think we'll hear from Koigig a little bit later on. They're making the point that they don't need any squad players now. If you're going to join the squad, if you're going to be grannied into the team or grandfathered into the team, then you need to be actually in the team, as opposed to making up numbers and taking somebody's seat on the plane. So I think that's happening. It seems like Mannion is going to be in contention to start. And then the other thing is, like, World Cup warm-up, pre-season friendlies, how many of them do we remember from any of the teams who were just in the Men's World Cup? How many of them do we remember from Ireland in 1990 or 1994? There's one where we beat Holland in Tilburg.
Yeah, I remember we went away to Holland, Germany in those days, and we beat Holland 2-0, did we? I remember we were very good. It was like, God, this is and then it just didn't matter.
The only reason, because ultimately in the actual big match, they just turned us over really easily and pack you through one in. But what was important was that the structure from that, we went to 5 in midfield. I think we beat them 1-0 in Tilburg. Tommy Coyne scored, and Tommy Coyne got in the team. So what's important is players are going to be getting in the team, but the results don't really matter. The patterns of play, definitely, it's disappointing. But is Katie McCabe really at her absolute, I'm going to die in the field today?
Yeah.
Or is Denise O'Sullivan, I'm going to die in the field today? They're like, I'm going to just make sure that I'm fit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This game will get completely lost and forgotten about in the annals of time. But now that we're the morning after, the afternoon before, you're analysing what you saw. And you're absolutely correct. Like the result, scoreline, whatever, totally irrelevant. But what you are looking for is some sort of pattern of play. And Vera Pauw said they had been working on that for a considerable period of time, and there was no real evidence that it was successful, the training camp. That's the only... If you're being ultra harsh on a team... But look, they looked a very solid core. They're going to be extremely difficult to beat at the very least. But we've been saying that for decades about Irish football, and it's time to move on from, we're very hard to beat and put them under pressure.
It's not easy.
Really not easy. It's
no.
the most difficult thing to invent creativity.
Stephen O'Donnell's line, the Dundalk manager, the hardest thing in football is actually scoring a goal, and he's right.
Ireland can score goals, but it's the build-up play is what would concern me for modern football. So, look... It's not the worst position to be in when we're talking about just improved attacking patterns. It's a good team. Vera Pauw has a seriously solid setup, but you just want a bit more. That's all.
7:52 this morning. Flick off the swearing switch on Johnny Ward, says Brian. I don't think he actually swore, did you?
I might have, yeah.
There was one or two I had in my mind, yeah.
I missed it.
It might have been a rhyme with Dirk Kuyt, maybe, but...
I did make the point there a few Fridays ago that the swearing on the show had become concerning. It was pretty good for a while. But you were passionate. You were passionate, and I'll allow a bit of room for passion, because the VAR decision or non-decision did exercise you in a way that brought out these adjectives.
As I say, I can take a beating, and if that never happened, I would have agreed with my nanny state, Ger, who chastised me this morning and gave me every reason after the fact for this being a bad idea, but not when literally something as ridiculous as that happens. That I've no control.
Can't be back in Manchester City in the latter stages of the Champions League, away from home against supposedly inferior opposition. We have seen them go out season after season after season after season in just this game. You just can't. It doesn't. My brain does not compute.
Who wins the Champions League, actually?
Probably, you'd have to say at this point,
Real Madrid.
I mean, look,
Napoli.
Well,
is there anything to be said against Napoli? They're 15 points clear in Serie A.
The problem is that Napoli will be the best team in the competition. They'll reach the final, and Real Madrid will pick their pockets, slit their throat, and away you go.
I genuinely think they're going to get to the semi-final, and that something like that will happen, where they'll play against someone like Real Madrid. Can you imagine playing Real Madrid? This version of them must be so infuriating. You go 2-0 up against Madrid in a place like Anfield on a European night, and Madrid are like, whatever.
You've no defence.
Whatever.
You've no defence. Your confidence is brittle. I think Napoli's best chance against Real Madrid is over 2 legs, actually. As opposed to in Istanbul in the final.
Naples on a night like that.
Well, I could see them having a great first leg against Madrid, say if it's in Naples, for example, and then the first half of the Bernabeu,
would you get tickets
and they collapse.
Would your football guy be able to get his tickets for Napoli versus Real Madrid in Naples? Because if he can, we're going.
The three of us.
Well,
you heard it here first.
He can come if he wants. Are you in?
If you want to come and go on your own,
you can come. You've
never been to Naples.
Didn't feel like the passion was there for that.
Mention my friend Nello, who's now living in Dublin, big Napoli fan.
Have you been to Naples?
I haven't been to Naples. I'd love to go. Yeah, I haven't been to the south of Italy really. But yeah, so you want?
I would love to.
If I can get 3 tickets,
you're in, Colin. You're allowed.
Who's paying for the flights and all that?
Well, we're all paying for our own flights, Johnny.
You pay for us.
Welcome to Off the Ball.
It'd be nice.
I mean, this
would be a nice gesture.
Didn't realise this was a work thing. That's okay. All right.
Team bonding.
Right. Okay.
For all the hard work.
Yeah. So it has to be.
Woo!
Yeah. Okay. Let me leave that with me.
We should ask Graham about Kvaratskhelia, the Georgian superstar playmaker.
Kvaradana.
He's about to come on the line here, Graham, and I'm very excited to talk about this guy. We're talking about a pre-show, myself and Johnny. Haven't seen much of this guy, but the bits I've seen looks fairly extraordinary. And his assist for the second goal against Eintracht Frankfurt the other night in Napoli's 2-0 win in Germany was extraordinary. It would make Guti blush. The little turn and swivel and then back heel all in one motion. Whew. This guy's extraordinary.
How have I not seen this?
And he's only a young fella. You should. I would actually advise you, even during the break there or whatever, just watching the assist. It'll take you 5 seconds, but it will add to your life.
Has either of you been to Tbilisi?
No.
Oh man,
Kaligan has. He tells me all about it.
Oh, I was there twice, and for the 0-0 draw the last day, I lost my contact lenses or something, so I couldn't actually see the game, which didn't matter at all as it turned out, because it was one of the worst games ever. But Tbilisi, what a cool city! Like it's like nowhere I'd ever been before. Such a cool city. Maybe Georgia has a new hero as well.
There you go. It turns out they do. Right, it is 7:56. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. OTB AM is live each morning with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. I'm delighted to say Graham Hunter is with us this morning. Graham, good morning to you.
Morning, gentlemen.
We're getting a little bit excited about Kvaradana, so we may as well start there. You've seen a good bit of Napoli this year, I think. How good is this kid?
Yeah, listen, I think when you're talking about a team which hasn't won Serie A for a couple of generations, and they're about to, bookies have paid off on them already. And if you look across their team, Ger, there aren't that many outright standout players except for this Georgian, Kvicha. I interviewed Gio Simeone recently, their striker who's been so prolific. Cholo Simeone's son has been prolific in the Champions League, scored against Liverpool, Reds fans will remember. And he talked about the precision of delivery from Kvicha, and that if you make a run, you'll get the ball. He's a guy who has traditionally for Napoli played on the left. He's predominantly right-footed, but one of the beautiful things is that in this modern idea of the inverted winger who comes off his wing onto his better foot, Kvicha can also really use his left foot. So if you watch him on the dribble, so I didn't catch all of what you were saying before.
It was riveting, Graham. Absolutely riveting.
But the boy's stunning. So I caught the end of you saying, go and watch his assists and go and get a ticket to watch Napoli if you possibly can, wherever they're playing.
You missed that because Ger has actually invited the three of us to go to watch Napoli in the Champions League.
Well, Johnny, listen, be really, really careful now about invited or we'll pay for you.
Well, this was also clarified. It was the former.
Your inner journalist coming out there, Graham.
It's friendly advice. Just try to pin him down before you travel, if it's possible. Kvicha, the reason to go see him is that he does everything. He's their principal penalty taker. He takes set plays. He takes the corners. On the counter-attack, he's absolutely dazzling because he's got a good dribble and he'll use both feet then. But if he's asked, and this is the thing that I really like about how he differs from, say, Rafinha, who we'll go on to talk about, who's one-footed. You saw it at Leeds. It's still the case at Barcelona. Whereas if Kvicha is asked to go outside of full-back onto his left back, he's got a nice little dinked cross in general. There is no question that his right foot is the powerful one. But also, Napoli, particularly under this coach, like the idea that became... maybe it's been used for generations, but I watched Pep Guardiola talk about overload one side and then a quick switch to the other side and see if the team's exposed. And this Georgian winger is very, very good at drawing a magnet of players towards him, stopping and then smashing the ball full across the pitch, onto a teammate's, particularly the overlapping right back, onto a teammate's foot. So watching him at this age, it isn't simply that he's a talent. To be this complete in all the facets of his play at 22 is something pretty special. It's just, we don't often at the end of these little segments talk about how enjoyable it is to watch him.
Great. Am I wrong in this now? But when he was with Kazan, did the Russian invasion sort of accelerate a move away from Russian football, or am I off the charts here?
No, I think that there are a lot of clubs. Chiganov is at Girona now from Dynamo Kiev, and there are a lot of players, I think, who are benefiting their clubs by going for decent fees. If I was to talk about Kvicha's motivation for leaving, it would be unfair. I mean, when you're talking about a war situation, I don't know his mentality about that, and you know, it would be unfair of me to comment it. But if you look at the clubs over there's definitely a need to cash in on assets now, and unfortunately, asset stripping will continue, I think.
The success that Napoli are having at the moment, we'd love to see it be sustainable. We'd love to see them keep that team together, but that's not really how football works. So what's your instinct about how long the lifespan of this might be?
I think one of the principal things will be about wages, because if you've been, and I think you guys have, if you've been in and around Naples as a city when the football team is exciting or successful, you feel like you're the king of all you survey. I remember talking to Pocho Lavezzi, ex-PSG, the Argentine international player, who talked about Napoli, whereby, you know, he lived in a house that led the garden down to the Mediterranean, and people would charter boats to come and sit at the bottom of his garden. A fleet of boats would come just because he was an adored Napoli player, and he went out to buy shoes one day. And totally unannounced, hadn't been nicking around town, but got into the shoe boutique, not shop. What am I thinking of? And he said within about 10 minutes, word had spread, a mob had gathered, and it was impossible for him to leave the shoe boutique because of the doting masses who were out there, and the cops had to be called. Now, for some players, that can be asphyxiating, but when they win this title, right across the world, there'll be focus upon you. You'll be feted in that city. You'll never have to buy another shoe or a drink or a pizza or whatever. And while I don't quite think that Napoli have it to win the Champions League this season, I think that after last night's result, Tuesday's result? I think they're going through. To be powerful in Europe, to be a tight-knit unit, to be adored, the title win will have a huge effect on these footballers. And therefore, it'll be about, and I don't know that Napoli need to cash in maybe more than once, it'll be about other clubs being able to pay them better wages. And I suspect that if there's a will from Napoli's owners to keep the majority of these players, if there is, then for another season we might see this block kept together again, because they will feel like they are gods from heaven by the end of this season.
Well, that'll be really exciting as a football project. You mentioned the potential for them to win. The Real Madrid performance the other night has been one of the standout performances that we've seen from them. We were talking in the aftermath of them winning the World Club Championship that the league form hadn't been great, but yet, you know, this is the competition they come alive in, and lo and behold, 2-0 down at Anfield is the moment they all felt alive. That was as good a performance we've seen from them, and yet there's still room for improvement. Yeah,
is there?
Well, maybe if the goalkeeper doesn't throw it out to the opposition for
one mistake,
a 2-0 lead.
Paris last season, I think that's a one mistake night, and he explained it quite nicely, because Courtois had it in his mind that he wanted to move the ball onto his right. He said that Salah stopped, so he thought he had time, and then his knobbly knee got in the way. Yeah, look, I think when we talked about after the World Championship, I said play the Jaws theme, because they're coming. And I said that not because I'm prescient, but because you learn to trust Carlo Ancelotti. Ancelotti tells us so much that's exactly a snapshot what's happening on the training ground. He'll tell you who's in form. He'll tell you who he likes. He'll tell you exactly who's maybe needs to follow his orders a bit more closely. He'll tell you players' positions. So, for example, Camavinga was deputising for Monday at left back, playing very, very well. This 20-year-old World Cup finalist who's abundantly talented. And he said, no. I'll put Alaba back there instead of Alaba at left centre-back because Camavinga, when he's fit, is my pivot. Now, Tchouaméni is out at the moment, but Tchouaméni's been the pivot. So to say I'll have Camavinga back in midfield would have been the standard answer by any manager. And Ancelotti went, no, he's my pivot. And that's where he played against Liverpool. And when Ancelotti saw that Liverpool's willingness and physical ability to play very high meant that Modric and Valverde were too deep and too wide of Camavinga, he adjusted that, made them play inside tight to him, so they were a really tight three. Asked Vinicius and Rodrigo to drop back to make it a 5 when they were defending. And Camavinga shone eventually, having looked a little bit exposed in those first 15 minutes because of the manager's tactics. But the thing about Ancelotti is he's been saying for, I would say, 3.5 weeks now, we're coming, we're fit, we're powerful. It's to do with Antonio Pintus, the fitness trainer. They during the World Cup, they looked at the schedule once the La Liga and European and the Worlds all recommenced. They knew, and again, Ancelotti said this to us in a press conference, we will have no days off, no rest between January and April. So what they did was, for anybody who was left behind, which was few, and then those who came back gradually, Antonio Pintus, the Italian fitness trainer who's been tied to Ancelotti since his Chelsea days, they worked them. They worked them so hard that, and again, Ancelotti announced there will be a drop. We will look sluggish and tired. And in the Spanish Super Cup final against Barcelona, Xavi knew that. They went after Madrid. Madrid couldn't cope with the press, and they were taken apart 3-1. And from the moment that Ancelotti believed that he could see that the fitness process had dug in and that tiredness was decreasing and that the stamina and the resilience was on the rise, he said, we're on the march. And he has been. Don't get me wrong, if you'd asked me pre-match, will they go 2 down and then score 5? I wouldn't be able to predict that for a second. But I've been saying for a few weeks now, look out, Real Madrid are coming. We saw that at Anfield. And another thing that, for my taste, hasn't been commented on enough was they were, as a group, the subs on the bench, the manager, the players on the pitch, were completely unflustered to be 2-0 down.
That comes through Ancelotti as well. It's like, so he's a pensioner next year, Graham. Must be the coolest dude in football at this stage, the way he's able to handle this. I'm just looking up, this is his 12th managerial role if you include Italy as an assistant when it started, and he still has a cigar in his mouth, and some of his key players are veterans themselves. And as you mentioned, you look at the body language even of Man City last night at the end, look at the body language of Liverpool, and look at the body language of Real Madrid's bench.
Yeah, look, Johnny, it's a magic cocktail, isn't it? If you're Ancelotti and your premium skill is managing a group and being the player whisperer, he got his tactics right and he stuck to them on Tuesday, irrespective of being initially buffeted by a tempest. Now, he retouched them, but he said, you know, they'd watched the Newcastle game, and I thought it was fascinating to hear Klopp. I mean, Johnny, I'll come back to what you said. Klopp, pre-match, said, I wish Newcastle had kept 11 on the pitch because we dropped our intensity. Klopp knew, as I suspect Ancelotti and his scouts knew, that Liverpool were on the rise, but not yet complete. Their Gakpo was very young and inexperienced. There's Basetic, young and inexperienced. Henderson a little bit lacking in energy. The two fullbacks, unrecognisable from the players who would bomb up and down and cause havoc, and on and on and on. And Ancelotti went, I bet that we'll have more intensity than them, that we will last longer than them. That if we weather whatever storm it is, then we'll be fine. So we'll play 3 up. Now, those Rodrigo and Vinicius work both midfield and attack, but instead of going 4 midfielders, you went 3 up, 4-3-3, whenever possible, and it worked. So the magic cocktail I'm talking about is that Ancelotti is tactically astute, but he is, in none of his positions, best known for supreme tactical acuity. It's about taking a group of footballers who are brilliant, where there are massive egos, potentially different interest groups, certainly different ages, different nationalities, and making them a whole, blending them. So for him, the fact that he is so extraordinary at getting players to not just to give their best, but to give extra for him, the relationships he builds, right across, and not just now, are genuinely extraordinary. And some of that came out to Anfield. He knew which players he didn't have to worry about. He knew which players he had to talk through the experience a little bit. But also, when these players finally in autobiographies or long retrospectives tell the story of their careers and talk about Anfield, they will talk about not letting him down. There's a really good book in part of his book, Quiet Management. John Terry talks about working for Ancelotti. He said, it's rare that I've seen one man who can lift the entire group and get them to run through walls for him. Terry also said it's rare that I've seen so many players who will play when they shouldn't be. They'll take an injection to play when they shouldn't be, and they'll do it for Carlo. Now, I think we all grew up with more of that type, man managers who had a coach next to them who did the daily training and were tactically acute. But that figure of Ancelotti, the one that can communicate with the multi-millionaires and make them want more, that's very precious. And I think it's the key element of what's happening at Madrid right now.
I don't know if you heard Ger on Saturday. I thought Kevin Doyle is fascinating, where he just feels that the Liverpool players are just tired of the same message for so long, and obviously their energy is gone, but it's this collapse is just, I can't get my head around it.
Yeah, I don't know, is it just tired of the same message? I think it's like
I look physically tired as well.
Multifactorial. Like the injuries took away a bit of the confidence, and then the drop in form of some players, the age profile of others, that hollowed out. There's no midfielders at the peak of their powers at the moment. And
look at Salah and Henderson compared to, say, Modric and Benzema, who are a lot older than them. Salah and Henderson they've dropped off. Their legs are not what they were. It would seem to me, yes.
I'd love to see the stats on the.
But Johnny, it's a team. It's across what's happened prior to the Real Madrid match. You know, I think that the drop off has been far more precarious, far more worrying than when it happened on Tuesday. Tuesday's a blip. You've got Bajcetic, who's 18 and has no experience of that whatsoever. Gakpo might have scored a couple of goals, but he's completely new to the club. Van Dijk is only just finding form and fitness again. They're still badly missing Diaz. Last season, went to the Champions League final. It's a hard fact that Villarreal, who at the moment are struggling to qualify for Europe, and who at that stage were very much not expected to get that far. It took Liverpool a long time to shake Villarreal off. So we aren't. Listen, I'm sorry, I didn't listen to the Saturday interview, and I'm not in any way opposing it. But if just because the snowdrops have been trampled upon doesn't mean that spring isn't coming at Liverpool. They had, if you watched the Newcastle game, once they were 2-0 out and both of those goals were kind of thrown at them, and then Pope gets sent off, there was a dip. That Klopp was right. I watched the entire match. There was a dip of just that aggression and intensity, and at the moment they're being rebuilt. They're already. We don't need to call them a squad in transition by the summer. It's happening now. That there's trouble about are the owners staying or going. There's been a massive revamp in the department, which has been their engine about how they buy and sell. There's huge transition going on there that affects the players' belief, their mentality, and if some of them, like you pointed out, are a little tired of or it's just the same old message from Klopp. Yeah, maybe, but it was fascinating. Again, to take it back to Ancelotti in his book, Preparisca la Copa, when he left Real Madrid the first time, he was on the list for Liverpool, and he said, I was flattered but not disappointed when I lost out to Klopp. So back then when Klopp took over, Ancelotti wrote, with him, they'll be successful. So this is at the beginning of Klopp's reign at Liverpool. He said, and with them, it won't be looking at whether the system is right. It will be looking at whether that intensity of how we played at Dortmund can last 2 seasons or 3 seasons, and then how do you maintain it or renew it?
Yeah.
So it's quite perspicacious written as Klopp moved from Dortmund to Liverpool. I think what we're seeing now, the little miracle is that it's lasted this long.
Can I ask you about Manchester City last night then, and what your assessment was of their performance? We've obviously talked about the handball at the end, but notwithstanding that, what is a level of expectation for the performance and the integration of Haaland in these games, and also for just the style of City at the moment in these matches away from home where they're supposed to be dominant and they just can't quite reach the same levels that we've seen them do in the Premier League? Are we expecting too much from them?
I was at Leipzig twice this season, home and away against Real Madrid. They beat Real Madrid and were pretty handy in the second leg. And in the first leg, it took an extraordinary performance in the last 20 minutes for Real Madrid to beat them. And my opinion, please believe me, this is not either partisan or lazy, but my opinion is Pep's opinion. They have a squad whereby for some months now there's been a disparity between what Pep wants them to be like, what they are often like in recent seasons, and how they're actually playing. My opinion is that it filtered out around the training ground at the end of the World Cup that Pep was very strongly considering taking the Brazil job. He didn't. He renewed. But I think that can rub an edge off people's respect and hunger. I'll tell you, how can I phrase this carefully and not get in trouble? There are a group of players at City who feel a little bit as if there are two or three Pep favourites. It's the first time in that dressing room where I've felt that there are a few players who kind of look up at their boss and think, I'm not getting a fair rub of the green here. And I think that was associated with the fact that in his head, Pep was turning over and over and over again, do I stay or do I take the Brazil job? Now, I think small things like that lead us, I think this has been quite a holistic conversation. Small things like that lead us back to the way that Ancelotti keeps a squad for a significant amount of time in the palm of his hand, and then when they get tired, he moves on. He moves much more quickly. His periods at clubs tend to be 2 years, 3 years. And at City last night, I watched a side which is looking for its patterns of play again, a side which has been on the road a lot recently, a side which tired in the second half, a side where Leipzig got a really strong telling to play higher up the pitch, to press. There was a correspondence between how Leipzig played second half against City to how Manchester United played at Camp Nou. Get on them, don't give them time to think, pressurise them into mistakes, and then when they make the mistakes, power at the goal. Leipzig up the gears. Manchester City didn't have a response, and therefore overall the fact that they were in the game, came strong in the last 15 minutes, it's anecdotal. They should have had a penalty. That would, like you say, that wouldn't have changed the pattern of the way in which, from first half domination where they didn't kill the game.
Changed the pattern of my bank account, in fairness, but anyway.
And you had 3-0, did you?
I had backed Man City to win the game, but I agree. The only thing is, Graham, when it was 1-1, Man City then started to completely reassert. So I get what you're saying, Leipzig were far better in the second half. But how much was that City just what frustrated me was Pep did nothing to change what was clearly a pattern of their dominance being on the way in the second half.
Except that, I can't explain why he made no subs. Don't know. He said he thought everything was fine. By the last 15 minutes, I thought they were right back in it again. I thought that they took a flurry of blows to the chin for about half an hour. And then his idea to keep everybody on, odd, I'll grant you. I don't think that lost them the game. I think that, finishing or a better penultimate or pre-penultimate pass in the first half made a big difference, in my opinion. I think they could have defended 2-0, 3-0. My opinion, Johnny, about where your money went is that, their best suit and their best shirt is a little bit wrinkled, and they're engaged in ironing right now. And for my opinion, it will click. And Haaland, you could be body language, super annoyed and sulky about when he gets the ball. And when the team's not playing well, when he's not scoring, the fact that he cannot do what he did at Dortmund, which is drop back into midfield, demand the ball, instantly be given it. It's a factor I first saw when I was when Henrik Larsson changed teams from Celtic to Barcelona, and came to Barcelona expecting that when he moved, like at Celtic, he'd be given the ball, because I'm Hendrik and I resolve games. And Haaland, when things aren't clicking, is like, well, I'm here, give me the ball and I'll run. And he was back in the Bundesliga effectively last night. And that's not permitted. That's not how players give you the ball at Manchester City. So there was a disconnect. And the less Haaland got the ball, the more he dropped into positions. Just give me it and I'll sort this out. Now, that's for the coach to work out on the training ground. I wish I knew what Pep Guardiola said to them all at the end when he did, who was your Phil Brown or whatever it was at Hull. Times are a little bit odd. I still think they'll be England's champions. And if they click, they're in the running to be European champions too.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult for them.
I think Haaland was also feeling he had Guardiola in his head, whereas I can't drop this far back because I'm going to get chastised here. So he was sort of in between a rock and a hard place, but he certainly wasn't getting the ball.
No.
Look, we're almost completely out of time. I have the game tonight for Barcelona. They've got bigger fish to fry, right? The league is the be all and end all. If Xavi wins the league this year, then it's his arrival as a manager who's won La Liga. Yeah. This match is still important along the way. Is it possible that he can give the 145% they need to?
No, he'll ask them to. You're right about what you've said, but this bears no real relationship to the title race. They're away to Almeria at the weekend. They should win. They'll have Gavi back. Ferran Torres, they'll play 4-3-3 at the weekend. Ferran Torres will start. You're right in their what their priorities are, Ger, but do not believe that they'll think secretly tonight, listen, if we go out, it doesn't matter. It does. They will treat it as horror if they go out. How they go through, I'd like you boys to phone me after the show and tell me.
There we go.
It's odds against it. You look confused there, Ger. I'm saying that miracles happen in football. Barcelona are not rotten, but just about everything that could be piled against them is piled against them tonight. I'm unsure about how they win.
So you think Man United are going to go through?
Tonight, I do. I think that what we saw last week with Pedri and Gavi in the teams until Pedri got injured. Manchester United so relentless. I thought it was Manchester United's best performance of the season. They were so relentless in asking players, can you think and pass and move at twice or three times the speed you're asked to do in La Liga? And across 2/3 of the game, the answer was no. And it should be like that again tonight. And Lewandowski won't go sprinting away and score a breakaway goal. So how does it happen? I'm not sure. There'll be a better back four for Barcelona. I think United might be asked a little bit more questions in the space that they're given. But boy, I see it as extremely difficult for Barcelona, Ger.
All right, should be a great game. Graham, thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
That was really fascinating stuff there from Graham this morning about loads of different parts of world football. Up next, former Leicester and Ireland hooker James Tracy joins us in the studio. First, here's Dan McDonnell reacting to the news. John O'Shea is joining Ireland's backroom team.
John O'Shea.
Yeah, I mean it's a significant appointment, his promotion from the under-21 set up to Stephen Kenny's staff. A bit of a surprise to me, I have to say.
I found Stephen Kenny was asked if he was on the lookout for a coach after the last set of games in the press conference was striking, because he almost bristled at the question. As in, we don't need a coach. What's the coach for?
Well, I think Kenny's thing, and I think he said this before, he's probably a little bit bemused by the focus on the number 3 in the setup. But
that's because it was Anthony Barry.
That's what it was. But it started with Damien Duff, you see. Like, he started off with a high-profile figure who left in a high-profile manner, and then it suddenly became this thing where, okay, the identity of this person is key. Then Anthony Barry came in, great reports, and it's just become a thing.
It's good to see he's gone for a low-profile appointment.
Well, it's come full circle. I was writing about this. It's come full circle back to another Centurion. But O'Shea has been in some ways, O'Shea, I think, ticks a lot of the boxes. Like Kenny for that role, whatever about wanting a coach, I think he wanted someone that was actively involved in the game, a younger person, on top of what's happening at club level on the scene. He hasn't been looking for the older figure out of work. It's been more, there's been a profile he's gone for. O'Shea is at Stoke at the moment. He's previously been at Reading, so he's double jobbing, but he's someone who's aware of the Irish players coming up, but has worked with the 21s and is forging out a pretty decent reputation for himself.
OTB AM. OTB GAA.
Scale has opened a war, definitely, with the football pod. Where are your power rankings now?
Tommy, I welcome you back to the show in anticipation of the Royal Rumble that's coming our way. Hurling pod versus football pod.
Will, you're a coward. I had to go off and leave my pancakes on the pan.
This is awkward.
What are you doing?
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts.
The Heineken Champions Cup is back. Leinster take on Ulster in the round of 16, Saturday, April 1st at 5:30 in the Aviva Stadium. Join the Sea of Blue for this massive interprovincial clash. Tickets on sale now at leinsterrugby.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Hurricane! Join me, Stephen Doyle, for this Sunday's London derby clash between Tottenham and Chelsea in the Premier League.
What a blistering start!
Yeah, no, it's massive. We knew it was going to be a tough game.
We need to clear our heads and we need to start to prepare for Tottenham.
It kicks off at a slightly earlier time of 1:30. And Reece James fires a rocket into the back of the net, and Chelsea's dominance is now demonstrated. The build-up to our full live exclusive commentary starts from 1 o'clock on Off the Ball this Sunday.
All right, it's 24 minutes past 8. I'm delighted to say James Tracy, former Leinster and Ireland hooker, is with us to talk to us about this game at the weekend. A team has been leaked to the papers, so we expect it to be the team because they've been very accurate recently with the teams. And when last you were in, you had Ronan Kelleher slightly ahead of Sheehan. They're both fit. Kelleher gets the nod. Is this are we to read anything into this, or is this just selection purely for the Italy game, do you think?
No, I wouldn't read anything into it. I think I said as well, it's definitely Dan's jersey at the minute, but it's just an opportunity because there's so little between them. I'd say it's an opportunity to give Ronan game time and a fair opportunity to see, who is going to be the number one going forward.
Obviously there should have been a red card for the challenge on Rob Herring, and he goes off with the HIA, and that's terrible, and there's massive fallout from that for loads of different reasons. But ancillary benefit was Kelleher ends up playing way more, I think, than they anticipated, and he was pretty good again.
Yeah, as I said, he's you got two Rolls Royces of hookers there, so it's a good time for Irish rugby, especially in the front row.
Is he fully fit coming back into that? Is he puffing after 10-15 minutes going, Jesus, I could have done with 15 minutes as opposed to 50 minutes here? Or is his conditioning, are they risking him if he's not ready for the 50 minutes? How does that work?
So I speak for myself in saying that it takes probably maybe 2 or 3 games to get match fit again. You can do all of the S&C stuff you want, but it's real minutes in battle that kind of get you battle hardened. Now he didn't look like he was too phased, but maybe on the inside he was dying a bit. It's just you can't replicate scrums into running and then rucks and getting off the ground and tackling and just
The other thing is, of course, that the ball is in play for longer and longer and longer as the rules change, and Ireland want to keep the ball in play longer and longer and longer, and so what he might have anticipated 2 or 3 seasons ago being a 38-minute game is suddenly a 48-minute game, and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. And we'd be well used to that with Stuart. Luckily, that's kind of what we try to do is keep the ball moving and try use that to our advantage and be fit and play a good brand of rugby as well. I think it's another important side of things. One
of the questions we used to do Friday night racing with the top racehorse trainers was, how often do you get the horses to do the actual thing they're going to be doing? And they were like, almost never. You get them to a level of fitness and then you just let the last bit be there in the tank for them because you don't extend them to that level. Do you train for 48 minutes of ball in play so that when the game is in, or how close to that full level of physical exertion do you ever get that is not on match day?
So there'd be a lot of science and thought put into there'd be parameters of certain amount of high speed meters and meters covered, and
this is your
time
GPS
on feet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then the parameters would be done off of your top speed. So say a percentage of that would be high speed meters, whether it be I should think 70 or 60, I'm not sure, but they'd over time they would have built thresholds, and then at least then they can monitor your level of exposure in that week and then manage your load that way and time on feet. But there's actually different ways of doing it. Each province would have a certain amount of time on feet, and it could vary a decent bit, different coaching styles, different ways of training.
So it's not standardised across 4 provinces.
There is standardised, the majority of stuff is standardised,
but there's still
the time on feet might be different for training times. That might mean the meters might be similar enough, but the time on feet out there might be pretty vast.
How lucky are they to have had the fortnight off since the French game, because it did look like one of the toughest physical exertions that these players will almost ever have, and that the ball was in play so much, and just how obviously combative the whole French team was.
I think any kind of like top maybe 6 sides, if you can get an extra week, an extra few days in, makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
One, the emotional dump of you getting yourself up for that huge game, and then it's the physical side of things. Like, you're not right for 2 days really after a game like that, especially in the forwards anyway. Maybe some of the backs might be okay after a day and a half, but I know definitely front row. You're not well for 2 days. You're
well.
Well, that's not right. But like, you're just not back. You're not back normal, or not flying or on all cylinders. And you just, as I said, you have to get yourself up emotionally to a level, and you're just exhausted.
What do you like on, say, the Sunday morning? Like, you know the way, like, likes of you and I, if we do exercise at our age now, after a spell of not doing anything, you wake up and you can barely get down the stairs.
Yeah.
What do you like as the peak of your profession coming out of a game like that on Sunday morning?
Yeah, just sore, tired. Yeah, I wouldn't sleep really after a game. Again, you're running on adrenaline for so long during it that you kind of, between just being bumped and bruised and coming off kind of that adrenaline high, that you wouldn't sleep that well. So you're just kind of waking up sore. There's kind of feeling of satisfaction though, of job well done if you've won the game, and then there's a hangover of kind of like the Sunday scaries when you're hungover. It's like that fear of like the review on the Monday morning if you've lost or you play badly. But I have to say, like, it's a very good feeling when you've won a really hard fought game, and you're a bit sore, but you kind of have that giddy feeling of getting back together on the Monday morning. But yeah, it's good and bad depending if you win or lose.
I had a question about the squads, right? So if you're in an Ireland squad at the moment and you get released back in the middle of it to play in the URC as it is now, what's your mindset for that? Is it like, screw you, I'm going to play the greatest game of my life this weekend? Or is it like, okay, this doesn't look good for me? How do you manage that?
Depends where you sit in the squad, really. I think if you feel aggrieved that you feel like you should be starting, then it's the latter what you said. But if you're kind of on the outskirts, and you're just to put it in holding the tackling bag for most of the week, you want to get back and play rugby again. So there's kind of two sides of the coin. But yeah, it would depend on circumstance, I'd say.
How would Joey Carberry feel last weekend?
Well, I'd say, in fairness to Joey, he's on the outside originally, so he's coming in to prove a point. That's where he's coming now. He's coming into camp to prove a point, and playing every time he plays for months now. He's proven a point. So I feel like that'd be his motivation. Don't obviously speak for him, but if you've any sort of setback, it ignites something in you. To be. He'd show how good you are and prove yourself again.
Big week for him in training then, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like every rep is important,
Yeah.
And I think as a young player, you don't realise the importance of not making mistakes and having big moments in training. And I think like he'd know the importance of that through the experience he has, and knowing going into every session that you got to show up and you got to be good. It
was a bit of a jolt, I think, when he ended up not being in the squad, but it's kind of what the squad needs as well, in a way. Like, it's bad for him on a personal level, but the rest of the squad is going, ooh, if I don't actually make every single rep count, then I could be him. So because it looked like we were just kind of in this, everybody knows exactly, like largely you've picked a team person, we'll get to it in a second. It's not a million miles away from the team that the coaches seem to have given the journalists. So the expectation is we kind of know everything at this stage. But something like that is like, oh, he was kind of penciled in. We knew that he was always going to be there, and then he's not, and it's like, shit, this could happen to me.
Yeah, and how good that you get a reinvigorated. Not that he didn't have motivation, but you have him unbelievably hungry, and some people channel it different ways. Some people they get pissed off and they use that as their energy, or they just want to show everyone how good they are. But like, look at Ross Byrne, he's been an unbelievable performer for for Leinster for I don't know how long on the outside, and he just plugged away, doing his job, and he's been phenomenal since he's gotten the opportunity.
So let's look at the teams, right? So I think we have a graphic of your team. I'll read it out for our podcast listeners. You've got Porter, Kelleher and Beelum in your front row, with Henderson coming in at 4, James Ryan captain in the team at 5. It's Conan, Josh Reiner Fleer at 7, and you've got Doris at 8. I think it's going to be flipped around in the team that's been in the papers anyway. Casey and Byrne 9 and 10. That's what they're going for, it looks like. Your team has Lowe, Hansen and Keenan as the back 3, with McCluskey keeping his place and Ringrose starting. And then on the bench you've got Sheehan, and it's Treadwell / Baird. Looks like Baird might get the nod, with O'Mahony on the bench. Murray, Crowley importantly is the number 10 backup, and you've got Bundy on the bench, but it looks like Bundy's going to start in the team that's been leaked. So you were pretty close.
Yeah, not too far off. I actually had Baird in 6, my original. And Conan 8. Right. This is my first draft for writing it down. I'm looking there, but like, I'm missing someone. Potentially player of the tournament. Missing out on my team here. I didn't even have him on the bench. I just completely forgotten about him. I was like,
Wiped this from your CD for any coaching interviews.
Never happened. Exactly, yeah. I was like, there's something missing. So anyway, I think Caelan will be...
Too much unseen work from Caelan Doris. He needs to be a bit flashier.
Well, yeah, exactly. No, I think he will be... I'll tip him now for player of the tournament. But I think... both of them have kind of interchanged between 6 and 8 for Leinster before, to kind of fit them into that back row. The reason I have him as 8 in my one was just that it's kind of like his jersey at the minute. It's making a material difference really. They're both good in the line out.
Does it change their role in any way?
Yeah, it does. In the line out, it would, and it would change their role off of defensive line out, off of scrum. It would just, there's just different kind of roles
and responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah.
And is it better that they're interchangeable, or is it better that they know I'm 6 today and I'm just going to do the 6 thing?
So it's actually for the back rows who can play across the back row, it's a bit of a disaster in game week because they have to learn 3 roles instead of learning 1. You know, hooker, yeah, you have a lot of responsibility. But you know, you got 1 role and that's all you can do really, unless you're like Dan Sheehan, you probably put him on the wing. But the back rows, it's a disaster. Their notebooks are twice as big as everyone else's because they have to learn all the different line out calls, all the different defensive calls from all the different positions, as well as the plays. So their week would be a little bit longer than everyone else. But on like from the interchangeable point of view, they do it all the time, so it wouldn't be a material difference. But I think the natural one is probably what's here, because Caelan's probably played a bit more 6 than Jack. But as I said, I just kind of had it there because he's been so good. I just leave him at 8.
You've got Casey and Byrne at 9 and 10, and at one stage it looked like Casey was slightly ahead of Murray in the Munster pecking order, and then obviously Murray has had an incredible start to the tournament. So this isn't in any way a significant step down, and we kind of expected this. At the same time, it's too inexperienced at 9 and 10 away from home in the Six Nations, so it's a proper challenge for them.
Yeah, so and my reasoning for starting Casey, I would have Murray is definitely like hands down, you know, probably Jamison, then Murray, but Murray's been like phenomenal. But I'd have him as my number 2. But I just thought for this sort of game, I think, you know, whoever you have, Casey like deserves a run as starting this game, and then at least you have really good experience coming off the bench with Crowley. Like, it's nice to pair up the experience with the guy who's had less exposure at that level, especially if they're from the same club. So I think that was kind of my reason for not having Murray starting with Byrne, because the obvious thing would be to get their partnership going. But I think 1, Casey deserves a go, and then 2, it probably makes sense having the Crowley kind of Murray off the bench.
We also kind of think of Ross Byrne as inexperienced somewhat, but he's not really.
No, I think like you look at, he's played in all of the big European games for Leinster. He's been pivotal in so many where we've been unfortunate to kind of lose Johnny early, or he's been injured, and like again, it's seamless kind of step in. He's had huge kicks to win his games. He's very, very calm under pressure, and be sure he's going to do a good
How
job.
much of it is on him though then in the game, like as a quarterback, to make up his own mind, or how much of it is like stick to the system here, stick to sort of what we're saying, and almost like don't make a fool of yourself, like, do you know what I mean? Like, or is he confident enough to say, no, I'm going to actually put my stamp on this?
Well, it'll all be kind of decided during the week. What's going to be our game plan versus like the type of defence you're playing against. So each team will have a certain way of doing things, like not too dissimilar to football, where you have like a formation of how you set up. Some teams will have their backfield. They might only have one in the backfield, which means as much as say you want to run the ball, maybe it's attacking kicks is the way you pin them back, have them second guessing, and that's how you punish them. Other teams, they might have two in the backfield, and you might be very hard at poaching the ball, so you got to play a different way against them, and other teams might not want to poach the ball at all. So it depends how they set up.
It'll be radically different to the France game.
Yeah, it will be. I think the fact that like Italy will close the wings, will close quite early, so I think there might be opportunities for crossfield kicks or kicks in behind there. But at the same time, I think the last time we played them in the Aviva, I remember watching. Now I don't know if this was what he was doing, but I think Joey showed the crossfield kick a lot of times and didn't, and they kind of, that winger then stepped out, and then we attacked that space in between outside 13. And again, that's completely my analysis on it. I don't know if that is exactly what
you saw Finn Russell in the Welsh game, for example. Like, this is like as good a kicking maybe as you will see in terms of will Byrne like look to a lot of that, and where does you rank out of 10 in terms of that game?
Or taking
kicking.
Crossfield kick. I think you look at Jack in Connacht, Ross, Johnny. You'd probably be like the three best like crossfield kickers, I think, in Ireland anyway, and that's just like a repertoire in their game. And I just, for a winger, I could say it's a disaster. You're trying to put pressure on in getting their eye as a defensive winger, thinking don't throw the pass, and then they just dink it over as if it was a kick or a pass itself on the money every time. So yeah, it's a great asset to have, especially with like different types of defences. You need to have those attributes to be able to punish them.
Can I ask you one last thing about Ryan Baird? It feels a little bit like Baird broke into the scene and was explosive, and then just had a little bit of a dip in form, but he's back now, and it feels like he's kind of the back row equivalent of Sheehan, where maybe he's a second row, and maybe that's where he's going to have all of his best rugby. Maybe he's second row equivalent, but it's just that I'm dying to see him in the team, just to see what he can bring. Is he the freak of nature that we keep being told he is? What's he like in training? What's that like?
I think athletically he's an absolute freak. Yeah, he's his spring and his counter movement jump, all those sorts of movements, he's just off the charts. But I think for the balance of the kind of back row and stuff like that, I think that definitely plays a part. That's probably kept him out, and experience, and he probably needs to get a bit of a break, and then prove himself consistently at the top level. He's definitely all the talent in the world, so that's definitely not the issue.
What's the best position?
I think 6 could be a good fit for him. I think his line out, because 6 is important in the line out, unless 6 or 8, depending. If you've a good like jumper at 8, then 6 isn't as relevant, or vice versa. I think he could be a class 6, but at the same time, talk about the balance of the back row. If you're to pick your starting back row tomorrow, you're probably going to have O'Mahony 6 because of the leadership he brings. I think he's a good fit balance wise with the other two, and his line out is exceptional. He's probably the best line out forward, definitely that I've ever trained with him anyway. Through to him, just like off the charts good.
Right.
And his game understanding and experience and all that side of things. So I think it's hard to get rid of him. And then you've different versions of back rows. So, you've Darson 6 say this week, hypothetically, if that's true. Again, it's like, how do you take him out?
Yeah.
So that's the only reason. That's what's kind of holding him back.
It's a very intense level of competition. And the final thing is, we know the team. When we've known the team for all of the games, and the team has been pretty accurate in advance of the team being announced. This is a massive change in Irish rugby.
Yeah, I think they're playing unbelievably well. I think they've nothing to hide. This is their team. Off we go. And I'm not sure if they are leaking it, but it seems to be accurate, or the journalists are getting very good at guessing. But yeah, I think
is there liberation under this coaching team that wasn't there under Schmidt? That's what I'm looking from afar. Do they feel? Is it a happier camp? Is it a more liberated camp? I don't know.
It's different coaching style. I think Joe's kind of like I touched on it before, is like the Moneyball style of, he was able to get down to the most minute bits of detail and come up with almost like a script for the game, and it was unbelievable that if you literally follow that exact script, you were able to win. And it was almost scary how he was able to analyze other teams, and he knew their habits of holding and folding and how to do a move that would manipulate that certain person in certain areas of the field. It was crazy. I think this coaching ticket, it's a different style. I think it's more like Andy Farrell is an unbelievable he's an unbelievable speaker, and you go to war for the man. Just He's great at galvanising people, and the minute detail is in there as well. But it's just a kind of a different way but this team is kind of grown in and taking a hold of it at the same time as well.
Yeah, it feels like it's the perfect marriage of time and the group and the coaching ticket, and it was the next evolutionary stage. Great to have you with us again, James. Thanks a million for that. That was brilliant. We've got virtual insanity in a moment, but first here's some Dan McDonald talking Liverpool.
If you have a team that has been dismantled a number of times this season, there's an element of clearly just a team, and I know that this sounds contradictory because they started really well last night, but even a team that comes out at times in matches and is behind early, the amount of early goals they conceded that fall behind, I suppose the second half in a weird way was probably a version of that. It was like they reset, and yet they come back out and they just don't have whatever it might be, the structure or the physicality or the whole package to sort of sustain a high level game like that. The goals are terrible, as you mentioned. Some of the goals were fantastic, but the third goal, just a routine set piece across the area. It's actually sort of almost an embarrassing goal to concede, and that comes down to, again, some kind of malaise that creeps through. It can be, I know that can be broken down very simply, and maybe this is what great managers do. They go, no, it was just a couple of mistakes. That was just a malfunction there. They have their zonal markers. It didn't work out in some shape or form, and the Allison mistake, and you can break it down. But when teams sort of rack up those number of errors, it's happening consistently. It's more a case of you've just lost something. Yeah, something that allows a team to do the incredible things that it did last season, to play every match they possibly could. There's an element of momentum that pulls you along through that, and instead what you're seeing now is, yes, there's flashes of the brilliance. There's flashes of that magic is still there. Yeah. But they can't see it.
You have entered Power Drive.
Oh, wow! John Duggan is with us. John, good morning to you.
Morning, Ger and Johnny.
How is the golf going?
It is can't hit a barn door stage at the moment. But as Winston Churchill said many times, never give in. And we've had 11 winners the last couple of years and 2 years of profit in a row. So we'll know where we are P&L wise October, November, and how the stakes haven't been that extravagant. So the faith is always there that you wake up and it's a new day and we go again.
You're walking on Killiney Beach. No better way to deal with a bad run.
Well, that's it. And I do it pretty much every day. And it's a boring Instagram page, but at least it's consistent.
Ah, look, a moment of zen. Come here, is there a strategy in just backing John Ram at the moment?
Yes, because he's winning everything. No, I think, Jared, that players can get on streaks, and we maybe discussed it a few weeks ago, that he is quite a guy motivated by a little bit of anger, and maybe he's able to channel that anger now positively into wins, as opposed to blowing up and blowing tournaments. So that's the maturity of being a world number one, to win a major as he did at the US Open a couple of years ago, and now winning everything.
What have you got for us this week?
So we have 5 players on the podcast on the Go Loud network, the OTB app on the Go Loud network. So you can check out the full 5 on the podcast because we want a bit of exclusivity and bonus content on that. I'll give you 2 right now. The headline selection for the Honda Classic in Florida, which starts today at 10 to 12 Irish time, is Taylor Pendrith, the Canadian. You can get 4 each way on him at 30 to 1. A bookmaker going 10 places on Taylor Pendrith. I think that's value. This is a weaker field than last week. They had all the big guns last week. This Honda Classic has got a bit of a weaker field. So Johnny'd know in a horse race sometimes it'd be like a handicap in a horse race, not a graded race. And you're looking for maybe the class act in the handicap, and I think Taylor Pendrith is that. 25th on debut in this last year. 7th on his penultimate start at Pebble Beach. Really, really big hitter of the ball. 10th in driving distance last year. 10th in greens and regulation. And I just think that and the Florida swing now, they're moving from California to Florida with this tournament to PGA National. I think Taylor Pendrith can definitely reach the frame at 30 to 1. So he's the headliner. The other one is the guy with the Irish name. I keep on tipping him because I think he's going to have a win very soon. Denny McCarthy, 14th last week at the Genesis Invitational. Nearly won at Pebble Beach a couple of weeks before that and is playing very consistently. The best putter on tour. Pretty much, I think that's the consensus, and he puts really well on the Bermuda greens as he's going to face this week. He was also 3rd in this a couple of years ago. So a lot of things pointing to Denny McCarthy for 3 each way at 25 to 1. So Denny McCarthy and Taylor Pendrith are the 2 we're going to give right now. The other 3, including a 200 to 1 outsider that'll probably miss the cut, but he could win. They're on the podcast network.
All right, good stuff, John. The news broke yesterday when we were on air that John O'Shea is going to be involved in the backroom team. You've been covering John O'Shea's career, basically your entire career as well. So what do you make of this?
I think it's good. I think it's going to be popular with the players. I mean, who doesn't like John O'Shea?
Likes a horse as well?
He does. I got a lift from him. I'm not trying to drop names or things, but I interviewed him about 7 years ago and I got a lift back from the Sunderland training ground to Newcastle Airport. We never talked about football the whole way, just talked about horses and golf. Because he had a leg of a horse, I think, at the time and stuff. And just a really nice man, a legend. Like, who can forget Gelsenkirchen? That goal, I think it was on his 100th appearance for the national team. 118 caps, Man United legend, Champions League winner.
I think it's fairly seamless as well, JD, in the sense, like, you know, I know that the camps are quite short and all that, but I don't think you should underestimate the upheaval and like the fact that this does look like, okay, we might have a bit of permanency here now. This might be our fixed team going.
Well, I think we need permanency, because look, it still is down.
Now, it might only be one campaign. Obviously,
it's still down to Stephen Kenny, right? Whatever happens in the campaign, I think there's a couple of things with John O'Shea. Like he's got the gravitas of his career, right, and the fact that he's so well liked, but also. I think this is a camp where the players, it does a feel good. They need to feel good. And that's what they've all been. You know, when you've any interviews, Nathan or anybody done an interview, they've always said how good the vibe is. So then you'll hope that the work he's done at Reading and the work he's doing at Stoke now, from a tactical point of view, and being in those dressing rooms at Ferguson and all that kind of thing, can help bring a bit of gravitas. But I think the key thing Johnny has said there, you have to have stability now with this, because really this is the campaign now.
It is.
We're in the no excuses phase now. The honeymoon is well over.
It is.
And Greece is the key to that.
It's a tricky campaign.
But Greece is the key.
That's grand. Like John O'Shea can also say, you know, Kenny's big on absolutely 11v11. Do not fear whoever you're playing. John O'Shea be like, I don't make Figo. We can do this. You know, we can actually do this.
Well, John O'Shea, I suppose, played in many versatile roles, whether it was a centre back or left back or in goal. I was at the game he played in goal. It was against Spurs in 2007.
Right.
Yeah. That was the day I got into the director's box, and I can never say how I got in there, but I get in there.
How'd you get in there?
I can't say because I'd get in trouble. But I remember Ferguson and Alan Sugar were in front
Surely
of me.
there's a statute of limitations on this.
No, I don't know.
State papers and all that?
I don't know if I can, but I brought a Man United fan with me. I wouldn't pedal because it's my birthday.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah. I brought a Man United. I was told the person who got me in, you said you're scouting for a football club.
Okay.
And the person I was with, I said he's a United fan. You cannot celebrate. And United absolutely dismantled us. The 4-0 beat the living hell out of us.
How was the Man United goalie?
He was great. Like I don't know, somebody got injured or something. The goalkeeper also got injured, and John O'Shea ended up in goal, and they were all singing his name and everything. The United fans were brilliant that day, but it was the old White Hart Lane. But that's one of my only very few things that I've done that does a claim to fame. But
he seems a humble type of guy. Like
he does.
Certainly, when we had him on, I have never met him, but I completely had warmed to him, and that harmony in the camp's important as well, JD.
Massively, and I just the wealth of experience of being in those dressing rooms, playing with Keane, playing in those big games.
Yeah. Now we still have to find somebody to mark Kylian Mbappe.
Yes.
It's tricky because Seamus Coleman is our outstanding right-sided playing week in, week out, and maybe he's got the nous at this stage. Maybe
neither him nor Doherty is quick enough.
Nobody is. It turns out.
I think the thing about France coming to Dublin is, look, the first 20 minutes will be fine, a bit like Liverpool the other night. It's all about France. Remember, we played the Dutch in 2000. The biggest hangover after the Euros. How big would the French hangover be with players like Varane having retired? What would the hangover be like? Deschamps, obviously, there's a continuity there with Deschamps, but it was more about France this than us, to be honest, in ways. But like, I'm very encouraged by the likes of Josh Cullen playing football week in, week out at the moment.
Yeah, and a style of play that's significantly better than it would have been.
But Greece is the key. I mean, I think we can accept as football fans if we do get results against Greece, and like it's very hard not to qualify for the Euros these days.
They've made it hard with this group. Is the only thing.
Yeah, but I think we're probably going to looking at a playoff through the Nations League. I think that's the destination we all know we're going to get to. But by that stage, we have to be ready.
Yeah. What's the atmosphere? Has Evan Ferguson bedded in as our first choice number 9, and is Obafemi playing off him?
What system was he playing?
Is Chidozie Egbene? He's playing up front now, but he did start at club level last season anyway. Is there a right wing back? Is there a possibility? But I don't know. Look,
there's nothing to fear from
the one thing I want to see from this team is please start beating weaker teams with conviction. And if you can do that as your base, then you can look at the bigger teams. Because we haven't been able to do that, and that's the problem Stephen Kenny's Ireland at the moment, and that's why there's such a cloud over it at the moment.
Andrew O'Mahony, he's in and out of the team at Norwich at the moment. He's playing one week and then he's playing the next week and he's off at half time, and he was a sub the other day.
Yeah.
So he hasn't quite.
Colin's a bit of a worry, I have to say, because he's obviously he fancies Craig Dawson now at Wolves.
Yeah, and they.
Well, all of a sudden, this is mad. Like, we're talking with the best centre backs we've ever had, and now we're like, oh, Collins isn't playing on Bamdelli's not. It's like.
Oh, we did have Paul McGrath and Mark Lawrence and we've
a very good bunch of centre halves. Even and I will mention young McNally for Coventry. He's doing really, really well, and he's not even on the periphery at the moment.
One thing I would say, experience is everything. Because I'm watching Bazunu every week, I'm watching highlights every single week, and even going to Stamford Bridge, the hostility of playing at Stamford Bridge, making late saves, the experience he's getting out of that.
And the other thing is that all the managers who come in, it's easy for them. So Mark Travers has been dropped, and he's not getting back in the team at the moment, and their form is unfortunately picked up, and coincidentally. But with Bazunu, there's been manager, and he's got in the team the whole way through. None of them have walked in and gone, I'm going to change the goalkeeper because it's a really easy thing for me to do, and it's an obvious thing.
Funny enough, there are, without over-elaborating, there are a lot of positions now here. I'm not exactly sure who he's going to start there, and because players might be injured, out of form, or even the system's going to be huge in that game.
I think whether or not Collins is in the team, he's playing because he's such an important leader.
Absolutely.
That's and I think probably
Seamus plays. Style almost.
Seamus plays.
I think Seamus plays. I mean, he's in the team. He's playing week in, week out in the Premier League. We got nobody else doing that.
Not fast enough to be a wing back anymore.
So maybe he plays as one of the three. I don't know. And then maybe you can have him and Doherty in the team. But I want Seamus' street smarts, and I want him fighting with the referee, and I want him rallying the troops.
We mentioned Haaland as well, in the sense if you're playing as Haaland, you just can't play a high line at any stage. And with Mbappe, it's like Stephen Kenny be like, we at no point in this game can we leave any space in behind because he's just too quick. Simple as.
Maybe if we're 3-0 up, we'd be able to.
Yeah.
John, anything else that we need to be aware of happening in the world today?
Obviously Man United tonight. No Gavi, no Pedri for the game at Old Trafford for the Barcelona-Man United Europa League match 2-2 from the first leg. We have the women's team now playing the USA in April twice in more build-up games to the World Cup. So in Texas on April the 8th, St. Louis, Missouri on April the 11th. The tea leaves suggesting 6 changes. I think we all know what the team is, as you probably went through with James Tracy there, that Craig Casey's going to get the nod, Ronan Kelleher, Ross Byrne, Bundy Aki, Jack Conan, Nene Henderson. Mick Byrne, sad news, but the former Tipperary hurler has passed away. 5 All-Ireland titles, 58, 61, 62, 64, 65. Was a wing-back in that team, Nina Era Og. And as Johnny knows, we're, probably 2.5 weeks out now from Cheltenham. So, done any research yet, Johnny?
Yeah, not as much as other years, but
probably better off. Sometimes better years going fresh, Johnny.
Yeah. Just have to make sure that there are good VAR decisions made and handballs are handballs.
Leona Maguire is doing the country proud as always in the golf. She's only 2 off the lead after the first round of the Thailand Classic on the LPGA Tour. Shane Lowry and Padraig Harrington are in this Honda Classic. later on in Florida.
All right, good stuff, JD. Thanks for that. It's 8:58 this morning, and more from John O'Corris on Off the Ball on News Talk on Saturday afternoon. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can leave a comment in the YouTube stream. And OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Casey's good, says Mark C. Once he stays out of the heavy stuff, goes for the gaps that are there. Ancelotti's in Klopp's head more than his own dentist, says Powell 74.
Yeah, element of that, I think.
The Premiership in general is built on high tempo midfield. Very few teams over the history of the Premiership can control a game from midfield, says Quirky 1980. I think that Pep's team initially, that was their thing. They could do that.
Man City were outstanding for an hour of that game last night. Let's not go over the top here, but it was just that, was it a case where 1-0 up here, and by the way, 1-1 draw should be fine. They should be able to get the job done in Manchester, but that period from half time to 70-75 for me, I just don't know why he didn't make any changes when it was clearly getting away from them. I don't know. And why did he come onto the pitch with the histrionics afterwards?
I don't know, but
why was that necessary?
He does that when the team is losing against inferior opposition. He'll leave them out there you got us into this problem, nothing to do with me. Well, and I'm like, you've got one of the most expensively assembled squads in the history of world sport, in any sport, and you've got 5 subs. They've changed the rules to be advantageous to the richest clubs, and you're sitting there and your hands going, no, nothing to do with me. You got us. Like, you fix it. They're paying you 14 million a year.
Absolutely. And I'd nearly have taken Haaland off and changed something. And again, we were a bit harsh on Haaland, but he wasn't having a good night. And they literally were not passing him the ball at any point in the game, pretty much.
Right.
Who did they play the weekend?
Last weekend.
Next weekend? It's going to be interesting.
You're supposed to be a lawyer. Lawyers ask questions that they know the answers to.
Yeah. Because obviously, when
I can Google it here for you, I'll tell you exactly what's happening.
It's going to be interesting now how they react to that. They missed De Bruyne last night, should mention, even though I don't know if De Bruyne is having a great season either.
Well, I think he's been excellent. I like
to a point.
I like to push Bournemouth away.
Okay, interesting.
5:30 on Saturday evening.
Always dangerous when you do the shift here and you're like, I wouldn't mind watching the 5:30 game.
And you get home on Tuesday.
Yeah. And you've been done by VAR.
Okay. It's hard to imagine that Ancelotti was at Everton only a few years ago, says Quirky 1980. Did the owners even realise what they had?
There you go. And people were probably saying he was past his best at that stage.
Paul Mallon says Madrid have an older midfield, but they aren't being asked to play in the same way as Liverpool. Virgil van Dijk, on the other hand, he's never been the same since he did his cruciate. Trent Alexander-Arnold is in Maguire form also. Ooh, the Harry Maguire comparison for Trent. I don't know. I think that's all fixable. I think if you see the turnaround at Manchester United, it has been fixable. Now, there was a change of manager, so
it is a bit. I know you're mentioning injuries and all that, but I don't really buy that. Why is Salah playing Salah's playing like 5 out of 10 this season, if even, and his confidence is kind of gone as well. I know he scored the other night and he scored against Everton, but they were gifts of goals. He's not, and also like we're on about Haaland, but the attacking three since Mane left, Firmino's kind of been injured, Jota's been injured, and in fairness, so has
Luis Diaz.
Diaz has been injured, but
I think
there's not a cohesion there at all.
No, there isn't.
Nunes is kind of like a fish out of water in a sense, even though he's very good.
I do think that they've had significant injury problems in their front line, with Jota being out for as long as he was and with Diaz being out for as long as he was. If those two had been fit, you might not have missed Bobby Firmino, who, let's face it, was becoming a sub.
Yeah.
Firmino is supposed to be in the I'm a super sub role and I'm going to do stuff, and there'll be specific games where I'm picked, where we try and physically brutalise the opposition. And
midfield has been terrible this season.
They've had none of that. Sure, absolutely. The midfield has been terrible. The defence has also been terrible, and the forwards have been terrible. So you take off 10% of the three of them, and
and it's probably even more.
They multiply. That they're not like 10% plus 10%. It's like they end up like being force multipliers of general malaise and mediocrity. So that is always a problem.
I don't know if Klopp can fix it. I really don't, and I do have asked Liverpool fans this, how long does he stay, and maybe mixed opinions, but for me he looks a bit of a beaten man at the moment, and his press conferences are kind of like that as well.
You think that's the explanation for the Joker style manic laughter when they're losing?
Possibly, yeah. But both he and Pep, I think, are definitely, like, Pep has obviously the issues of the stuff off the pitch and so on and so forth, and he's a very prickly character, as is Klopp to an extent. But I think they're really, really feeling the heat at the moment, and maybe the likes of Eddie Howe, who just bats it away and just stays on a kind of an even level, even though Newcastle are having a bit of a wobble. Maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah.
I think Klopp.
You think he's going to go?
I don't really see him fixing this. I think Liverpool, the surgery is going to take a bit too long for him to. Yeah, and like
I don't know. Canada gets fit. Virgil has some kind of recovery in form. You sign Jude Bellingham, and away you go. And all of a sudden, everybody's fit next year.
No, and
you can do that.
Graham made a good point about when Ancelotti feels that it's time to move on. It's time to move on. Klopp's time to move on may have passed.
4 minutes past 9. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you today. OTB Gold at 1 is Joe meeting Ger Johnny. Coigig is at 3. Our retro panel is leaders, captains and managers in the dressing room. And then OTB Gold is the story of the Wexford hurlers from 1956. You can follow Off the Ball across our social channels. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. Up next, Shane Curran.
You're listening
Off
to
the Ball.
OTB.
What's wrong with you all? Pancakes, maple syrup, bacon, scrambled eggs. It's the best breakfast you could eat.
See, just make your mind up.
That's quintessential
That's just
American.
like I can't make my mind up what to have for breakfast. I'm going to pile it all on together.
Somebody says this is bizarre radio.
Ice cream on a pancake. Tuna. He's brought shame to the whole town, village where he lives.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
I would say nearly from now on it's about establishing that style of play, making sure everyone's completely well drilled. That's why I actually maybe would have not brought on your Anya and your Diane today, because we know what they can do. We know they're definitely going to be in the squad. And I maybe would have liked to have just seen people who've played a little bit less just to see how they would have fared. But I guess there's no room for sentimentality either.
Are they definites for the squad?
No, they're not. They're absolutely bricking it right now.
They are, but
I'm not even giving an opinion on it. I'm curious that you would say those two names are definites, because for me they
think that there would be conscious of the eyebrows raised if those two names were not brought to Australia.
No, but I do agree with what you said. I would have loved to see, for example, Atkinson. I want to see her play. She's moved across the water to play. She's playing in one of the best leagues in the world. I want to see what she's like. Again, I would have liked to see Carusa play a full game. Obviously, maybe, she might not be in Vera's mindset as a starting number 9, but I don't know why.
Yeah, halftime would have.
I don't know why she's not, and it's a great chance to do that. These are your games that you find out who you're going to play in the World Cup, and I get that you have to see how the new girls fit in, blah blah blah. But that's it. Now the games in June is going to be more interesting for me, because those are the definite games that are going to be, the test for the starting 11.
OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, I'm delighted to say that Shane Curran is with us to talk to us about the Rossies and what the revolution that's happening there. Shane, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, fellas. How are you all? All good.
Well, as a Kildare man, I'm excited for you. I wonder how you feel about the whole thing.
Roscommon, man, we're all very excited down in Roscommon with the start that Davy has got off to with the team. It's been an incredible start, and I suppose wins breed confidence, and now it's a case of looking forward to every game in the league, as opposed to maybe at the start of the league wondering where we were going to pick up 3 points in any game, really, and over the last, I think, 7 or 8 seasons, been yo-yoing up and down between Division 1 and 2. League wins were hard come by, apart from, I suppose, in Division 2 last year, where they won every game and went unbeaten, and are now still unbeaten in the league over 2 seasons. So it's been a great start. It has given everyone a shot in the arm and a bit of confidence. It's given supporters a big boost, and I'd like it maybe to the start of the Arteta, maybe Klopp eras with Arsenal and Liverpool, that the supporters feel connected and great crowds in the Hyde, and it's super to see.
In fairness, the Club Roscommon, the Friends of Roscommon, the organisers had long been really active, and were just crying out for something to get behind. And at various stages, as you say, the team would come up and there would be a surge of optimism, and then they go back down. But this feels just a little bit different for a couple of reasons. And I know a lot of people out there are going to be like, it's only the league, you're getting carried away. But we're supposed to get carried away. We love sport. The whole point about this is that we love it and we're entitled to. But I think that there's the foundation here is a really good team over the last 5, 6, 7 years. And as far as I understand, he trialled 90 players before settling on the squad. That's one aspect of this. And then the other aspect is that the style of play is really aggressive and hard-working and consistent. It's something that you can now go, there's a pattern of play emerging from these games that has the fingerprints of the manager, and that's getting the best out of the players. So why wouldn't you be getting excited about it?
Yeah, it's true. I suppose really I take my supporters hat off, and I kind of go to games more looking at it from an analytical point of view, a managerial and a coaching point of view than maybe a supporter. And when you're going as a supporter, I don't even get a chance to get to many games now because I'm coaching in Westmeath, but you get to see them on television and you get to analyse it a little bit more. And as you alluded to there, 100%, there is a style and there is a definitive way of playing, and there is a hardness about Roscommon as well, which is good. I think over the last couple of seasons, a bit of softness crept in terms of how we played the game. We like to play the game too slow, too lateral, on the players' terms as opposed to on the team's terms, and that certainly has changed. And Davy, to his credit, I think really the recruitment has been hugely important. Obviously Martin McHugh has come in from Donegal. He's put his stamp on it. I was talking to one of the players coming off a plane recently, and to have an All-Ireland winner in the dressing room with the players it gives it huge validity, and gives them huge scope for believing in what's been said. And their strength and conditioning, Noel Flynn is there. He's of Rossi blood, has been there before. I think with Kevin McStay, very, very good guy. And then we've Eddie Lohan, who Eddie has been involved with numerous underage squads, and from the famous Lohan family of Roscommon greatness. And he's in the dressing room there, and he's coaching the forwards. And you can see that there's people invested in the team, invested in the players, and it seems that nobody is guaranteed their place on the pitch, which I think, there's been a certain lethargy with the team over the last number of years. You nearly pick it 1 to 15 or 1 16, 17 every single week. But now, you've got the likes of Dara Craig is coming, you've got Ben O'Carroll, you've got Robbie Dolan, all right around under 20 teams over the last couple of years. Tiger Oak has come back to steady the midfield and do very well, and they've done all that while Eddie Nolan is out injured, Ultan Harney is gone for the year, and Ronan Daly. So they were 3 massive losses to Davy before he ever went to a trial at all, and he's just got on with his job, got on with no excuses, and they've got the win against Tyrone, which was a huge confidence booster, and went obviously into Galway and won, and last weekend again Armagh. I think we have to kind of maybe temper it as well in terms of that. I think myself that a lot of teams are at different stages of the season now, bearing in mind where and when the championship starts. But for Roscommon, it was hugely important that we arrest that kind of bi-yearly cycle of up and down, and it looks like we've done that this season and can look forward to the championship now with Mayo on the 9th of April with a lot of confidence.
A staggering state of affairs where you have Division 1 where Connacht have the first, second and third after 3 games. No Leinster team. So it's a bizarre. I see Lee Keegan is saying it's a division that nobody wants to win. But the one thing I would say, Shane, when Davy came on, he was on here on OTB AM. It was a few months ago now, but I was working that morning, and what really struck me was I sort of put it to him, you're taking over here, what is the upside of this job? You're taking over from a good manager, Anthony Cunningham. Roscommon have won a couple of Connacht titles, they're in Division 1. Where's the upside to this? And he's like, the potential of this forward line is what really does for me. And it really struck me, and I remember there was a big reaction from Roscommon fans on social media as well, and it's obviously rubbing off this belief that he's inculcating in the squad.
100%, and he's been involved with Maynooth as well, so he's seen a good bit of the talent maybe coming through from the freshers and from the competitions in terms of the underage talent. He's had Colin Walsh there as well in Maynooth that was involved with the Roscommon under-20s, and look, he obviously knows the inside track in terms of the amount of young people that are around. And what I like about Davy is that he's not made any excuses, and he's been very, very confident now. He's talked He's an affable guy. He's obviously a good coach, and his belief system and his positivity has rubbed off on the players, and I think that's crucial. But he's interspersed that in with players as well that are hungry. The likes of Dara Craig is a huge player. Has been very, very good for DCU recently. Top talent. His dad Jerry played for the county, so he has that blood in him and wants to play for Roscommon and wants to thrive with Roscommon, and that's hugely important. And I think once you have that, and once you have that fighting spirit within a team, within a squad, to make training sessions really competitive, well, then I think that's where we've seen the difference over the last 6 to 8 months, where I think it had got stale. It had got stale under previous managements, and the recruitment, as I said, and the coaching staff has been very, very good, and that's key to it. I think there's nobody guaranteed their place, even though some of the older stalwarts like Niall Daly have been absolutely fantastic as well, and Enda Smith, when he started or played or come on, has made a difference with Tony Smith also on the sideline, and young Cox. So the squad seems to be getting deeper, and certainly there's energy in their play. There's energy in how they want to play. There's a focus on going after the ball, and I think that's very good. And I think if you can keep that up, certainly I think the next 2 or 3 games are going to be difficult. Kerry and Mayo are going to be difficult, and I think they'll be targeting Donegal and Monaghan to try and make sure and ensure that Roscommon stay up. And
sorry, Shane, yeah, that's the compelling thing. Ger's always gone on about the league and all that, and like these games, they're so in their own. There's such a narrative behind them, because if you look at the 3 Connacht managers now, Pádraig Joyce under huge pressure this year because we got to an All-Ireland final last year, despite the fact this year's going to be harder. Kevin McStay has come in, Mayo are always thereabouts, but Roscommon now have created this pressure in the sense that the fans are starting to believe you've won 3 games, you're already sort of not going to get relegated. So between now and that Mayo game you mentioned, there is a slight kind of pressure in the sense of, well, how do we better this, and what if we start losing games, and what if we go into the Connacht Championship on the back of, we'll say, 4 defeats in a row?
Well, I think pressure is a privilege, and when you're at this level, you have to embrace that pressure, and you have to take it on board, and you have to grow under it, and you have to grow under the constraints of it as well. And it will bring certain elements for certainly for the younger players, where there will be questions asked to them. There will be bad days. There's no doubt about that. And I think when they have those little blips and those bumps in the road, that's really the time that we need to stick with them and keep developing them on the pathway that they're on. It won't be simple. I think, as you alluded to there, well, Pádraig and Kevin are at different stages of their careers, and certainly their teams are at more mature levels, I feel, even though Mayo, you may argue, are rebuilding. Their teams are at more mature levels from an S&C point of view than Roscommon's are. And I think Roscommon at the moment are surviving on the skill of the players, the skill of the management.
Sorry, on that, does that imply though that their S&C wasn't up to scratch going into this regime, or why would they not? Why would they be behind?
I think it's well known. It's not like I'm not offering up an opinion. It's well known that our S&C is quite a bit behind where it should be at this level. The reasons for it, I'm not 100% sure, but there's been a lot of coming and going with different S&C people over the last number of years, so we haven't really got that foundation or that consistency in our S&C, and I think it's something that needs to be addressed. Certainly at underage level, there's not the same programs, or there's not the same emphasis on it as there is in other counties. And I think if you were to ask Davy if there's any area that he'd like to improve in his team, I think S&C would be one of them. That said, I think sometimes we have to be very careful, I think, in football too, that we balance the pylon in terms of what's good and what's bad. We have got very skillful footballers. We've a strong tradition of producing really good forwards right back to the 40s, 50s into Charlie McManus era, Frankie Dolan era, and now with the Murtas and Smiths and et al. So that era, that issue has never been a problem. It's kind of ensuring that the strength and conditioning is right and the supports are right around these players is crucial now for the next 5 to 6 years.
Shane, I'm working on a half-baked theory, and it's still only half-baked, so if the cake flops, then so be it. But I think that this is going to be a very random year because it's the first time that we've had a new championship where there's going to be a round robin after the provincial championships, which dictate who ends up in the All-Ireland quarterfinals. So we don't honestly know how well you need to be playing at this stage of the season. The other corollary that we don't know is that this has been concertinaed in now to 12, 14 week period. So this might be the only year we ever get the opportunity for this to happen. But I feel like there's a possibility that we get a Leicester style, a team comes, starts playing well, keeps playing well, gets confidence, and then never dips because there isn't actually a break in you playing. So in that group of teams who could be Leicester, I would have Derry. I would kind of still have Galway because they haven't yet established themselves as like perennial All-Ireland contenders. You'd have had Armagh there. And then if Roscommon keep winning, like all of a sudden you're like, actually, you know what? Because they have forwards. You can't, loads of counties, really great defensive structures, take 4 or 5 years to get an offensive plan going.
Gets you so far.
You guys have it already.
Yeah, we definitely have forwards, but we do have that, and I think we have to. Our system has to be balanced on being very effective going forward and taking advantage of all of the pluses that we have up there. I think defensively, we are defending in numbers now. We're defending really, really hard and very rigidly and very strongly. Is it sustainable at over a full season? I'm not too sure, but what we have at the moment is confidence, and confidence is everything in sport. And once you can keep building on that without it being chipped away at too much, and certainly when play Mayo and the Hyde in a couple of weeks' time, Kerry away, if those performances are at the level that these performances have been over the last 3 weeks, well, then you're looking forward into the championship. But it's very, 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 very close. The end of the league, I think we're 2 weeks out to the Mayo game on the 9th of April.
Yeah.
So it's
a league final in between.
Yeah, there's nothing in between, and possibly a league final, correct. And I don't necessarily think at the moment the Roscommon squad is deep enough to kind of hang that. And we've got to also, I suppose, take into account that probably two of the best teams in the country, Derry and Dublin, are playing in Division 2 at the moment as well. So,
are you eating my half-baked cake?
Yeah, and I think we never know. I think we might be a Brighton or a Brentford. I'm not so sure if we can be a Leicester just yet.
But I do think there's a possibility that, like, if Dublin are slightly off where they have been in recent seasons, and with McCaffrey and Mannion back, they might not be. But there's a possibility they might be a little bit undercooked coming through Division 2 and don't quite reach the pitch that they're at. Kerry, traditionally when Jack O'Connor has done well, there's been a really good, strong, solid league campaign because of the shortened season, because they had the team holiday, because two of their clubs went to All-Ireland finals. They haven't had the full strength and conditioning work done that they want to do. Then all of a sudden this is a bit more open. I mean, who knows? Like Cork could come from nowhere.
No, absolutely. It is certainly. I think the All-Ireland Championship this year will be a lot more open. And Roscommon, the expectations in Roscommon always really do well when expectations are dampened a little bit. Now expectations are quite high, but I also think, to be fair, among the supporters and among certainly the management fraternity and coaching fraternity who talk about the games, there is a realisation that there's been a brilliant job done, but there's an awful lot more work to do. And we kind of taper it and try and dampen maybe that huge expectation that's been created now by the media, which is all very good. I think it's great to see the kids, for example, on the Hyde last weekend, meeting the players and chatting to the players. And I think we've lost that we lost that over the last 10 or 15 years for some reason. But post-COVID, I think see kids out on the pitch, looking at their heroes, touching their heroes, getting their signatures and all that sort of stuff. That's all brilliant for a county like Roscommon. And we need that in abundance all the time. And the league gives us that opportunity. And as I said, there will be bumps in the road, and the championship will come, and it may not go necessarily how we felt it will come. But if you said to a Roscommon supporter 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago that we'd survive in Division 1, we'd do quite well in the All-Ireland series and win a couple of games, we would take that, and everything else after that is a huge bonus. And I think we've got to give huge credit to Davy and his backroom team, and I think, to be honest about as well, the players, for the way they've knuckled down, got to the job, and started doing it in the way that we feel they can do, with the support that they have around them.
Shane, great to talk to you again. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Pleasure all mine, guys. Pleasure all mine.
Shane Curran there. 18 weeks to All-Ireland quarter-final day. That's nothing.
It really is nothing, yeah. And it's like just looking, Roscommon, 70,000 people. It's again one of them counties where it's literally football. It's like Monaghan, Mayo, some of these counties where hurling doesn't really get a look in. Soccer isn't necessarily a big thing. Roscommon is football crazy, and I know that myself. Kilkenny obviously disgraced to football. Interesting, Arthur D's article that was online this week about the attempt to bring sort of hurling in underage at all levels of club from sevens up was voted down. I think 2 votes to 1 at Congress, whatever. And Roscommon is one of these counties where obviously football is completely dominant, but they're crazy about football. And the problem for Davy will be now, and I know this, is to dampen expectation, because they will get ahead of themselves.
It's a book and Bronco. You got to ride it.
And enjoy it as well, because top of the league after 3 games. Yeah. These are the games that do matter almost more than championship in some respects. If you're not going to win the All Ireland, fair enough. You're top of Division 1 after 3 games is an amazing achievement.
They're guaranteed to be in the round robin. And look, we'll have another debate about this some other day about whether or not the Connacht Championship is going to mean anything to them this year. It probably will, because it's a new management team, but like in the long run, if they get their form right for those 3 round robin games and they're in an All-Ireland quarter final in 18 weeks, it's been a good season and no one will want to face them at that stage. Right, don't miss all the action in Rugby Daily today in your OTB podcast network, bringing you everything you need to know about rugby. So wherever you get your podcasts, search for OTB Rugby and subscribe, and every day Rugby Daily will drop. It's all in partnership with Deliveroo. Deliveroo has some great bundles and deals, so open the app, make your choice, and watch your rider come to you. Deliveroo, food, we get it. Now, fresh in the door from Sunny Marbs, Kathleen McNamee. Good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, guys. Yeah, I'm all right. A bit tired, but hopefully make it through this and then just crawl into bed. Left Marbella at 2 a.m. So.
Oh, yeah. Right. Jesus.
Yeah.
What time was the flight?
It's been a long few hours.
What time was the flight? Oh, great. Dodgy internet in some unknown part of the... You back? You're back, Kathleen?
I'm back. I can hear you guys.
Great.
Yeah.
What time was the flight?
The flight was at 5 to 6.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So
these are first world problems. These are honestly first world problems. Like, she's a young journalist jetting off Spain to watch the team she loves. She's not complaining.
I have to agree with Johnny on that, to be fair. It was tiresome at the time, but pretty good.
All right, fair enough. 0-0 draw, underwhelming from playing style, certainly seems to have been the commentary afterwards. You recorded Koi Gig. It's available for download now in the OTB football feed. What was the consensus from the expert on Koi Gig?
I think much the same as what you guys were saying this morning. I think maybe what we took away a little bit more was that this was an opportunity to see the new girls in action and also see some of the people who are maybe still trying to prove their point about why they should get on the plane. So we all know that, Katie and Denise are definitely going. But what about your Abby Larkins, or what about, say, someone like Aoife Mannion, who we hadn't seen in an Irish context before? And this is actually, yesterday was the most amount of minutes she played since she did her ACL in February. So considering the performance she put in, it was quite impressive. But yeah, I think the main consensus was it was good to see those players get a run out, but also we still haven't solved our problem of how do we get goals. Especially our midfield was pretty much non-existent, as was our front players. Funny enough, Emma Byrne always calls for Katie McCabe to play higher up the pitch. She did yesterday, and she was non-existent at times, which is not something you say about her normally.
Were they bypassing midfield, Kathleen, or is it more that the midfielders just didn't have the confidence to get on the ball? Or why when you say non-existent, why non-existent?
So it was either that they were doing long balls up from the back, which is something that we have done for ages, and we were like, I actually was vaguely impressed that we weren't doing it as much yesterday as we normally did, and Vera did say to me that it's something she had been working on. But it was also just China were pressing us so hard in midfield that there was just no opportunity for the likes of Denise to get on any sort of balls. And also it's just this weird system that Vera likes to play with, 5 at the back, and then Heather Payne is that lone player up front, which makes no sense. Like, I love Heather Payne. I think she's a great player. I think she deserves to go Australia, but she's not a proven goal scorer. Like, I think she'd make so much more sense on the wings and doing those runs. Like, most of the time, if you look at the Irish heat maps and the players who have worked the most during a game, she's only second to Denise O'Sullivan. So she's a great worker on the pitch, but she's just not, like, she had some chances yesterday and she just fluffed them completely.
the other part about this is that, like, ultimately, it doesn't really matter. These are friendlies in the build-up to the World Cup. Try and make sure that you find some new players. Make sure your key players don't get injured, but are in something approximating form. And the 2 games against America are going to be an opportunity for us to have a backs to the wall preparation for our games against Canada and Australia.
Yeah, because I was listening to you guys saying it didn't really matter earlier, and I kind of disagree in that, okay, yes, in the grand scheme of, we're not going to remember this match in like 5 years' time, probably even in 2 years' time in terms of the score. But in terms of working out where this squad is right now and like who's the starting 11, who are the players that are going to make it, who are the ones that aren't, I do think it was important. And I have an interview coming out with Vera later today, which you can get across Off the Ball on all the social channels. But she was talking about the reason why she picked like a Germany and a China to play, and why she wanted to play France, and why she wanted to have, you know, an African opponent. And she has very carefully mapped out this route to the World Cup, and she's very carefully mapped out exactly what she wants the players to learn from each team. And I think we don't have a lot of depth in our squad. We have a good enough starting 11, but we don't have a lot of depth, and that's why it's exciting to see players like Aoife Mannion coming in, because I think she does give us that. And days like yesterday, you could tell quite quickly the players that were rising to the occasion and the ones who weren't, and the ones who maybe have to be a little bit worried and have to prove something over the next couple of months. So I think from that perspective, it is important. It's really important in the short term, but in the longer term, not so much, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess 100%. It's clearly important for Vera and for the players. It's like the league, the Alliance Football League doesn't matter, but it's really important to the individual players and the team. And so I buy that. I guess I'm making the point that, like, if Katie McCabe isn't playing well, or if Denise Sullivan isn't playing well, that's probably because they're not that tuned in or excited about the fact that this is a game with nobody watching. And you know, they're grand. I don't expect them to do a 10 out of 10 performance in those matches.
But also, if you look at like their attitudes in general, like they are the sort of players who give 100%. Okay, they might not maybe do the crunching sort of tackles, but also like they were, like Katie yesterday looked frustrated. She looked annoyed on the pitch. And I don't know if it's a combination of not getting the ball she wanted, or if it's like the club stuff coming into it as well. So like, you also, as much as Katie is definitely on the plane, you also don't want your captain and your main player coming off the pitch frustrated, no matter if it's a friendly or a World Cup game or whatever it might be.
Is that the end of the experiment of her playing further? So when you said she played further afield, was she playing on the left of the 3 in midfield, or where was she playing?
Yeah, so she was on the left up. There was like Heather Payne, and then it was kind of Katie and Denise on the 2 different sides. But like, she was really, really struggling with it. Like, there was a couple of times where she was just running over to the right side just to try and get involved in play, and getting quite annoyed. The referee was quite bad as well, and she was getting quite a lot of heavy hits, and I think he went in his pocket once for a yellow card, but that was it. I don't know if it's the end. It was interesting. Emma Byrne has always called for Katie to play higher up, and she was eating her words on Coigig last night, because the issue is we just don't have the service to get the ball to players like Katie when she is playing there.
So she's got to play left back, left wing back, and we've got to run the game through her. And maybe that's one of the conclusions that you draw from matches like this.
Yeah, well, also another thing that the girls suggested last night was having like a midfield 4, and like actually developing that as a stronger positional thing. Like, a lot of the positioning yesterday was a little bit strange. You know, I don't really think Megan Connolly should be playing in the back line. I think she's far better in midfield and gives us a lot more options there. Now, when Niamh Fahey comes back, that may change around a little bit. But yeah, Katie up front yesterday, it just didn't work unless you're going to put her like full on striking position and give her free rein to run as much as she wants. I don't see that position working for her all that much in the future.
It's a tricky one in fairness, because she's also brilliant crossing ability and a wizard of a left foot if you're going to be putting the ball in the box. But if the game is bypassing you in midfield, then she starts getting frustrated as well. So
and I think that's the point of these games, though.
Yeah, and maybe as well, you're kind of cutting your cloth in terms of who you're playing against. Maybe in different games she might use her differently, but that's a massive challenge, because she's going to be under so much scrutiny, Vera, in the sense of you're not getting the best out of Katie McCabe.
Well, it's just like, it was interesting yesterday because China were a lot more physical than I expected them to be, and we handled it quite well. Like, I expected players to get a bit more of a hot head on them, and they were very, very technical. And again, we stood up to it mostly. It was just like they had a couple of breaks. It's just we couldn't create chances of our own. I think like Louise Quinn had one header off the bar from a McCabe corner, and that in the first half, and then in the second half there was the disallowed goal, and that was kind of it. The ball didn't go through near the net at all apart from that. So yeah, it is an issue, and as we always say, like, it's fine having low scoring games and it be 0-0 or 1-0, but also we still need to get that one goal, and that has been the thing that sunk us in the past.
That's why these games are useful as well, in the sense of you watch the video back and you're like, why are we not creating anything here, and you work on it.
Yeah, and but we're not a particularly creative team. Like, we're our best case scenario is 2-0 all draws and a 1-0 win in the World Cup. Right, like I think it's important that we temper expectations that this is going to be some kind of chrysalis-like emergence of a butterfly team that is the Harlem Globetrotters equivalent of. It's not going to happen. Like, we got here by fighting and clawing our way through the group, and that's what we should expect. And like, that's the stage of evolution where the team is at the moment.
Yeah, and I think, like, looking ahead, we have Nations League at the end of the year. The Euros are coming up as well. Like, there are plenty of places for us to go from this. I think it's just important that the whole experience is taken for what it is. It's amazing to get there, but also we do have the potential to put it up to these teams. I'm not saying we're going to win, but I say we do have the potential to perform. And I think that's the thing that would concern me, is that we'll get overawed by it and not put on a performance. But it's still ages away. And like the US games, which haven't officially been announced, but they are pretty much happening. Those will be great, because those, I think the two stadiums are like 20,000-30,000 that they're playing in, and US fans turn up for those games. Like, that's going to be one of the last few times they'll get the chance to see them before they go to Australia, so they'll probably be packed out, and that is great preparation for us then heading into the 80,000 cauldron that will be that first opening game, which actually, for any fans still looking for tickets, another batch of tickets are going on sale at 1:00 Irish time tonight, if anyone's looking.
You'll be long in bed by then.
I will be in bed about 5 minutes after this chat.
Right. So all in all, slightly disappointing performance. Plenty of information and data points that Vera Pauw certainly will be able to take as something from this. And we know a bit more about now the squad depth, but that's about it in terms of learnings from this.
Yeah, I think probably the main learning I got was individuals. So Aoife Mannion was really, really good, and was talking to her afterwards, and she knew she was good as well. And then also Marissa Shiva, don't think she got enough time, and we go on to this a bit more on Coigig, but don't think she got enough time on the pitch, but she had some really interesting plays with the ball. So I think I'd like to see a bit more of her and see how she fits into the squad.
Mannion's on the plane, is that what we're assuming?
Pretty much, I think.
Right.
She may even have played her way into the starting 11 if she keeps it up. She was, from get-go, so impressive. And she was behind Courtney Brosnan. She was the loudest person on the pitch, because there was only about 50 people in the stadium. I think journalists probably outnumbered fans and parents. But you could hear everything they were saying, and she was impressive. Like, her vision, very, very good. Her confidence on the ball, very good. Like, a Chinese player could have her backed into the corner, and she would have the confidence to hold the ball herself and actually play it out of defence, rather than just doing our normal thing, which was to whack it away.
All right. Good stuff, Kathleen. Enjoy the sleep, and thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
More Kathleen McNamee goodness on, of course, the Coigig pod, which is available in the OTB football feed, where you get post-match reaction from Karen Duggan and from Emma Byrne as well. Right, the Italy team has been named as expected. Garabisi comes back in at 10. It is pretty exciting
Prediction. It's a great game. Like for I don't know if it has an Ireland-Italy game that I can't remember if there had been deciding games. This game just means a lot in the sense of we're the best team in the world at the moment, and also we've made changes at out half, and Italy are good as well. Italy are really putting it up to teams, and yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah,
What's your prediction?
Look, I think Ireland are going to win. I think Ireland are going to handle their business.
20 points ish.
I think you'd be happy with a 10 to 15 point victory with the team that we've named. Like, I would expect them to score 3, 2, 4 tries. I would expect to concede 2 tries this time as opposed to, so, then you're getting into a 10 to 12, 14 point difference. Better judges than I are predicting a 20 odd point score.
And England, Wales?
I think they're going to hockey Wales.
They're going to hockey them.
I'm going to hockey Wales after what's happened this week. The Welsh team
won't galvanise the Welsh. No, definitely not.
It's not like this isn't men of Harlech in the Hollow. This is not that. No. This is like our rugby culture is defunct. The people who are in charge of us don't have our best interest at heart. The absolutely everything is a shambles. I mean, if that galvanises the Welsh team, then that is one of the all-time great performances from any sports team under the circumstances. But
I shall ask you in the game of the weekend, France-Scotland.
I think France are going to beat Scotland. They have to, otherwise, if Scotland beat France,
yeah, we're getting like
French rugby is going to tear itself apart.
Yeah,
so maybe we should be cheering for Scotland this weekend.
Lots to look forward to.
On tomorrow's show, much better analysis than that from Ron Nagar and Alan Quinlan. Liam Griffin is on talking about his proposal for all clubs to be mandated to have hurling. Manchester United against Barcelona reaction, of course, and the Friday fire pit as well. Now, the former Reading and Leeds manager, Brian McDermott, who made his debut with Arsenal on the same team as Liam Brady, and who was Irish qualified but couldn't play for Ireland because he had an underage cap for England and desperately wanted to play for Ireland, spoke with Nathan this week. The lads have been raving about this interview. The full thing airs tonight at 9 o'clock. So here is a little snippet for you.
Your interest in Ireland wasn't just a professional interest. Your dad was from Sligo, your mum was from Clare. There's Irish blood through and through.
Oh yeah, so look, my story's quite sad actually. Not so sad now. I've kind of come to some kind of terms with it. When I was 17 in 1979, I had a choice of Ireland and England, and I spoke to my father. Don Howe was the English assistant manager at the time. Don Howe was he was at Arsenal, and he sort of said, you've got to play for England and this, that, and the other. I've got Irish bones, Irish blood. I played for England in a youth tournament, and I kind of think I remember about sort of 6 to 8 months later after playing in this thing, I think, oh my God, I don't belong here. This is not. So I felt like a complete imposter as far as what the country I was playing for. It's no disrespect to this country. I live here, but my blood is completely Irish, and I felt a complete traitor. And I felt like that for years and years and years and years. And that was one of the issues I had. It was one of the major issues I had, and why I turned to something I shouldn't have done, just to try to numb that feeling. And I always say to people, God, I'd give anything now for one Irish cap. And maybe if I'd have had that one Irish cap, I wouldn't have gone through the stuff that I went through in my life as far as football's concerned and actual life's concerned. But maybe it wasn't the truth. I don't know. But it was for me. It was, and I think about it every day, even now to this day.
Right.
Even to this day. And
that was the rule then, was because you had played for the England under-17s.
Yeah.
You could never switch.
No, you couldn't. And it wasn't. And if you'd left me another 8 months, I would have had much more of a mind of my own. I would have done. That's not right for me. But that's what happened at that time, which is sad, really. And I do presentations now, and I talk about this a lot. I talk about identity, and I talk about what that's like for me. And I kind of made my mind up. I thought, you know what? I have to make it up to the whole of Ireland. I have to. I know they're never going to forgive me. Listen, no one cares, Nathan. That it's. I'm sure that no one does. But I thought, I've got to become the Republic of Ireland manager. That's gonna make me feel
numb the pain.
Yeah, but obviously that didn't happen.
Now, very happy to say, joined in studio by Mr. Liam Hayes. Take your pick, All Ireland winner, journalist, editor, in the business of publishing hero books at the moment, novelist, plenty more besides. You're very welcome. Great to see you again.
Thanks, Joe. It's good to see you.
I don't know which title feels more apt at this stage.
Lots of hats. But you get to my age, you need lots of hats. Because the hair is thinning anyhow. So.
Well, the genesis of this chat, by the way, is we spoke to you, I think, on the evening Colm O'Rourke was appointed as Meath manager, and we had a good chat, your thoughts on Colm and how things would go. And literally that evening we were sitting around in the office and we said, we should get Liam in for a chat some evening, and it takes several months to organise these things.
Yeah,
so
it's life, isn't it?
Here we are.
Yeah.
Are you more invested in Meath's fortunes with Colm there, or where are you?
No, I'm not. I'm the black sheep of that family. I think I may have said before, I don't do any reunions. I've done one reunion of our own Meath team in 30 years. I live in Dublin. Stopped going to Meath matches soon after I retired. I said that's not working for me. Pretty soon after, about 2 years after I retired, I wasn't enjoying that experience. So I haven't seen Meath play live. In say 13, 14 years. So I just watch them at distance, safe distance. And I think that's something that when you invest your life in something, and I'm the sort, when you invest your life in something and you do something like for a considerable period of time, 5, 10, 15 years, and it's over, then you turn around and you go in a different direction. That's what I believe anyhow.
Did you make a conscious choice? I don't want to be singing about the glory days for the rest of my life, or was it just a very natural feeling which took hold of you? It wasn't necessarily a conscious one.
It's really strange, Joe. I didn't have a sort of premonition, but in the last line of my book, Out of Our Skins, that I wrote the year I was retiring in 1992, and I didn't think, we're all odd in our own way. We're all on some sort of spectrum place. Everyone talks the spectrum, but as far as I'm concerned, everyone on the planet's on the spectrum. Okay, some people are in a very bad place. Some of us are on it doing our own thing. So I had no real sense of where I would go or what I would want to do. But I did write in the very last chapter, sentence of my book, Out of Our Skins, was that I'm going to leave this room and I'm going to close the door, and I'll be very happy to leave the door closed, and I won't want to go back in basically to meet too many of the lads. And
you liked them,
and that's how it turned out.
You did like them at the time.
Of course I did. I liked the lads. You're warriors. You're fighting together. Yeah. You're vested in something. You know what I mean? You're literally, you're cutting your hand and shaking hands, and this is blood brother stuff, all this sort of stuff, which is very real at the time. But when you get to a certain age or a certain time in your career, you realise that this is not reality, and there's a life waiting for you, and there's other things waiting for you. And you also realise, when I see young lads nowadays, and I don't, I don't sort of, I'm not knocking them, but you still find young lads saying, this group of lads are the best friends of my life. I've got them for my life. They're friends for life. It just isn't like that. You all go your separate ways. And there's 2 or 3 lads who might be very close. Mostly everyone goes their separate ways. Not as far as me. I'm sort of, I like to be the outcast. But everyone goes their separate ways. And when I look back on that, this is not pointing fingers at any of the Meath guys. There's 30 lads in that dressing room. You're not going to be friends with those 30 guys for life. Half of them you probably didn't even like to begin with. You put up with them, right? And of the other half, there's some lads you liked and some lads you were very close to. So if you walk away with 2 or 3 friendships, you're doing very well. I mean, serious, good friendships.
Are you sentimental away from football in your life generally? Doesn't sound like it.
No, I am. I would be a softie, but I also have a mild OCD where I sort of, like to make decisions and stick by them. You know? And it's the same in business. I've been lucky enough, fortunate to start, 4 businesses, and I don't do reunions there either. When we started the Title newspaper in 1990, my decades mixed up when you get to my age.
96, I think.
96. Yeah. I didn't go to the reunion in 10 years later, even though I founded the paper. I think it's a bit like going back and retracing steps. Certainly with footballers, everyone ages and everyone is. When you meet the guys, you're there's a lot there. There's a lot of old memories there, but you don't want to. You've lived your own life since then, and you've had a lot of experience that you haven't shared with those lads since then. Everyone has to get on with their life.
Okay. So, I guess the attraction for a lot of those reunions is to almost, to use the cliche, plug back in. It was like we were never separated. You'd all almost revert to 25-year-olds, the same jokes, the same laughs, and maybe that's the appeal for some people to go back into that atmosphere. But
and a lot of lads like it, and I understand that. I have no problem with that. I mean, a lot of that, it works for a lot of people. lads and girls. It works for a lot of people. It's not something that I need. I mean, I have my memories from that time.
Yeah.
And mostly they're good memories. You hold on to some of the bad memories too, of some bad defeats. But by and large, you don't need to revisit the group. You don't have much in common. You really don't have much in common, At a point in time, and I think I said to you when we chatted about Colin, the reason Meath footballers are on earth is to defeat Dublin. That's something that we've always believed. Something that we, it's just fundamental to who we are, all right? And it's funny, I said it to you in that interview when we spoke last, and then the next day, Colin, I think, gave his first interview as Meath manager, and he said the exact same thing, and we hadn't even rehearsed it or haven't even spoken about it. So that's the reason why you're on life. That's where life is about. But when you retire and you're not part of the game anymore, you're no skin in the game, you're never going to beat Dublin again, you don't have that much in common. It's a practicality. It's just a fact. It's one of those, obvious things.
Yes. A question I wanted to ask you, it's jumping in a bit at the deep end here, if that's okay. I was reading a piece Dave Walsh wrote a couple of years ago when he bumped into you in the street. And he was reminiscing about the time he interviewed you the week of the 1987 All-Ireland final against Cork. And the interview was over. And he turned off his microphone and thanks very much. And you said, you haven't asked me about Gerard, which floored him. Gerard, your brother, who had died by suicide 4 years previously. Recording device went back on. You talked at length. It's published the Sunday morning of the All-Ireland final. Meath win by 6 points. You get man of the match. So it didn't affect you overly, clearly. 4 years after his death, of all mornings, why that morning?
I think it was a family thing. I mean, when you get to your first... when you are a Gaelic footballer or hurler and you never imagine yourself, to begin with, you never imagine yourself playing in an All-Ireland final, right? It's a dream, but it's never going to happen. For us in Meath, for us in Meath, the aim was to beat Dublin, and we beat Dublin in the Leinster final in 1986. Now, we barely imagined that happening. So an All-Ireland final was beyond the distant mountains. It was way over there. So when you finally get to one, it's like reaching a promised place. And it's not about you at that stage. It is about your family. It is about everybody. You know what I mean? Because, I came across photographs a niece of mine sent me a few nights ago, and I had never seen them before. And there were loads of photographs of me eating breakfast at home in Screen. And my mother had made me eggs and sausages and toast and no bacon. And I was tucking in at the top of the table. And around the table was my immediate family, but uncles and aunts, everybody's around the table. And then there was more photographs of me getting into the car, and they all had balloons and they all had these big banners.
It's the morning of the final.
It's the morning of the All-Ireland final. And I'd never even seen the banner before. There was something like, Cork will have Kerry, but they won't have Liam and Jerry. Me and Jerry McEntee. I'd never seen the banner before. But to answer your question, this is like, probably we're meeting in Malahide, maybe about 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10. Yeah. It's only like 5 or 6 hours before the game, but you're at home in the family atmosphere. You're not in a hotel. You haven't been sequestered the night before. In Meath, we'd always sleep in our own beds the night before an All-Ireland final. So you're with all those people, and So I think for me that week it was about family, and it was about the whole family. And Gerard was the missing member of our immediate family, so it seemed natural to talk about him. And I was surprised that David didn't ask me any questions about him. And Dave was a pretty good journalist then, and still is a pretty good journalist. He was like, I think he was the best journalist in the country at that time, and he sort of broke ground for a lot of people. I don't mind saying that, because we fell out then for about 10 years and never spoke, David and myself. One of those foolish things journalists are like kids in the playground, they fall out all the time. And to meet David in the street that day was amazing and brilliant. It was, and to show that I am sort of sentimental, to meet him was great, because David Walsh and I had soldiered together as well. We had been on the same path in terms of GA. Yeah. We went down to Munster finals together. We both covered the Six Nations, the former Five Nations, for 5 or 6 years together. We'd meet up after every game and have dinner together. So we were very, very, very close. And we fell out for 10 years.
Was that over Michelle Smith?
Oh God, it was over probably, God knows, definitely Michelle.
Yeah.
And it could be other things.
Right.
Yeah. But Michelle would have been centre to it all. Yeah.
And because I knew this in the background, but it's funny, you go back, even this week, I thought, I must go back and actually see who wrote what when. A lot of it seems to have just been erased from the internet. It's curious. You were more on the pro, let's not jump to conclusions side here.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, I felt, jumped to conclusions. And also I felt a bit protective of Michelle as well, because I felt I knew her better than any of the others. I wasn't in Atlanta. The Sunday Press didn't send me. I don't know why. Was it football or something? I opted out of a lot of gigs as a journalist because I was playing football. Yeah. And then when I started going to them, it didn't help the end of my football career. I knew Michelle and Eric pretty well. I mean, I'd interviewed them more than anybody else. I'd spent a lot of time with them, and I understood what they were doing. I understood their training methodology. I understood why they were breaking new ground. And Michelle was spending more time in the gym than in the pool in terms of hours per week. She was training unlike most other swimmers. So I knew a lot of facts, and I felt a lot of other people didn't, because a lot of other people hadn't interviewed her. You know, I tended to. I mean, as a journalist, I like to interview the individual sports person a lot. I like interviewing swimmers and boxers. You know, you felt you're really getting into a serious person who's consumed by what they're doing. And I always found Michelle interesting. We weren't friends by any means, but I knew her pretty well.
And how late in the day was it when you thought, oh,
I think it's over a period of time. But you know, I felt that what I didn't like most was the manner, the aggressive manner in which I felt a lot of journalists attacked her. I mean, it happened literally, you know, pretty much before she got out of the water. You know what I mean?
And they would say they had heard from people who had a keen eye and swimmers who looked at the progress and would have said this is unlikely.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, you know, second and third hand sort of stuff then. So I mean, it was a lot of. There was a lot of speculation,
but I felt at the time that's informed speculation.
I didn't feel it was. You know, like if you look at, say, for instance, the work that David did subsequently when he was, you know, tracking down Lance Armstrong.
Yeah,
that type of thing, where it's good gumshoe sort of work. Like, you know what I mean? It's really serious journalism at work. I didn't feel that was at work in the initial stages with Michelle. I felt it was innuendo. It was you know, comments from other swimmers, you know, who knew what, who knew the facts, what were the facts, who knew what. I didn't feel there were any facts at that stage. And I didn't feel there was any, and I'm not going back there looking through you. I didn't feel there was any serious journalism at work in terms of in the initial condemnation of Michelle.
Okay. Difficult for me to defend it because I can't read verbatim what was said, but I would class talking to other swimmers who have, say, watched her career, noted the improvements, and would have a very informed sense of what's possible, what's not possible. There's journalism in that, and there's a bravery. I mean, very easy to just say, all is great, let's all sing Air on the Veen again. So I think there's a bravery in actually calling it early, I suppose.
Yeah, and perhaps there is. You know, I would differ. I think, there's a lot of nastiness at work between sports people as well. And you know, it's careful what I say here.
Yes.
You know, it's I don't. You get to my age, you know, you look back on any of the relationships that, you know, that fell down because you had different beliefs and different things. You know, I was just saying to one of the guys earlier. I mean, you know. I fell out with him at Dunphy over something I can't even remember, and I was in here one morning. I don't know what I was doing in here. I think we were both doing the papers or something, and we bumped into each other in the waiting room. So we chatted for like half an hour, 45 minutes, and just bygones are bygones. But like we were sort of alleged enemies for 10 years and that type of thing. So, you know, I think, you know, in those days, you know, you reached decisions on things and you were sort of digging your heels in, and a lot of journalists can fall out and still do because of beliefs. Like as a journalist, you know, you're as strong as your beliefs and your ability to back up those beliefs. So you know, you can sort of back yourself into certain places.
Corner, yeah. Do you miss sports writing in the newspapers?
Not much. No, I'm busy now with publishing books.
Yeah.
So I'm meeting I'm meeting so many writers now and watching them work and editing their work and encouraging them to write, that I find that enthralling. And the country's just so full of so many good young writers. It's a shame really, because there's not enough places, not enough room for them to really showcase their skills. Like we published over 20 books last year, and we published something like 60 books in the last 3 years plus. So I'm not going to mention names. I did it previously in an interview, and I don't want to mention names because I'm so proud of so many of our writers. But there's some writers who are, I can mention one, Arthur O'Dea from This Parish Off the Ball.
Don't mention him.
I have to mention him because he is such a gifted writer. And I mentioned Ty Coakley in Cork.
And these books
is just the most phenomenal writer.
Yeah, these books are local stories, sports stories.
Yeah, we tend to concentrate on. We do national titles, like we've done Mike Ross and Kevin Walsh and Kevin McStay, and we do a lot of national books. But what we love most is to localise our publishing list. And there are so many great stories that are pertain to different communities that have never been written. I'm talking like for instance, say David Clifford or Henry Shefflin, one of the iconic characters of their era, never actually wrote their story. And then with 30, 40, 50 years passed, and somebody turns up at the door and say, listen, let's write your story. Let's remember your life. Let's put it in a book form. And that's one, like, we have a lot of series. We have a Game of Life series, and we have a Flesh and Blood series, which is a family memoirs. And they're amazing books. Like we have Richie Power Senior and Junior this year as one of our family memoirs. So you have father and son, both Nicola Kenny Jersey, different generations. And we dovetailed our lives, so you can read and experience both lives side by side, and they're amazing books to publish. Our Legends series, which I'm alluding to a second ago, that's an amazing experience, Joe, because you're meeting a 60, 70, probably 70, 80-year-old person who was star material, who was top of the heap, who was David Clifford once upon a time. So when I'm talking to some of these characters and I'm asking them to say, let us publish your life story, what I do say to them is, okay, you've been in some dressing rooms in your life. Let me bring you to this dressing room. I'm going to open the door, right? And I'm going to...
OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar. The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue.
I heard through the grapevine that Paddy Andrews was happy enough that Sean O'Shea had put the ball in the net.